Chapter 1 Introduction. What are network games? Good evening. In our previous exploration, we touched upon the fundamentals of game theory, the delicate dance of strategy and consequence. Tonight, we embark on a journey into a specialized realm: network games. A world where the value of a choice isn't just about what you do, but also what everyone else is doing. It's a landscape of coordination, tipping points, and ultimately, the quest for platform dominance. So, what are network games? At their core, they represent situations where the utility, the benefit, that an individual derives from a good or service is directly affected by the number of other individuals using that same good or service. Think of the telephone. A single telephone, sitting silently on a desk, is utterly useless. Its value springs to life only when another telephone, and another, joins the network. This interconnectedness, this dependence on the actions of others, is the defining characteristic of network games. We can visualize this effect as a ripple expanding across a still pond. Each new user, each new connection, adds to the overall value for everyone already present. This is what we call a network effect. It's a positive feedback loop, a virtuous cycle where growth begets more growth. And it stands in stark contrast to many traditional economic models where scarcity drives value. In a network game, abundance, at least up to a point, is the key. More users often translate to more value. Imagine, for a moment, the early days of email. Before widespread adoption, sending an email felt like shouting into the void. Few people checked their inboxes regularly, making communication slow and unreliable. As more people embraced email, the value of having an email address soared. Communication became faster, more convenient, and more efficient. The network grew, and with it, the utility for each participant. Now, consider the implications of this network effect. It creates a powerful incentive for coordination. Individuals are not simply making independent choices based on their own preferences. They're actively trying to align their choices with those of others. They want to be part of the network, to reap the benefits of connectivity. This desire for coordination can lead to fascinating, and sometimes unpredictable, outcomes. One such outcome is the concept of a tipping point. This is the critical mass, the threshold where the network effect becomes so strong that adoption accelerates rapidly. Below the tipping point, the network may struggle to gain traction. The value offered is too low to outweigh the inconvenience of switching or the uncertainty of the platform. But once that tipping point is crossed, momentum takes over. New users flock to the network, driven by the promise of increased utility and the fear of being left behind. The classical economist, steeped in the tradition of independent actors making rational choices, might struggle to fully grasp the dynamic nature of a tipping point. They might model individual decisions in isolation, overlooking the crucial influence of network effects. But in network games, these effects are paramount. They shape behavior, influence adoption rates, and ultimately determine which platforms thrive and which ones fade away. And this brings us to the final, and perhaps most significant, aspect of network games: the potential for platform dominance. Because of the strong network effects, the first platform to achieve critical mass often enjoys a considerable advantage. It becomes the de facto standard, the hub around which all other activity revolves. Competitors may struggle to gain a foothold, even if their technology is superior, simply because they lack the network size and momentum. The policymaker, tasked with ensuring fair competition, must grapple with this inherent tendency towards dominance. How to foster innovation without stifling growth. How to prevent a single platform from wielding undue power. These are the complex questions that arise in the world of network games. Consider the realm of social media. Once a platform establishes a large and engaged user base, it becomes incredibly difficult for new entrants to compete. Users are reluctant to switch to a new platform if their friends, family, and colleagues are not there. The network effect creates a powerful barrier to entry, solidifying the position of the dominant player. The flow of users, once established, becomes a powerful current, difficult to divert. So, Network games are more than just simple interactions. They are complex systems characterized by positive feedback loops, coordination dilemmas, tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. They represent a significant departure from traditional economic models and require a different way of thinking about value, strategy, and competition. But what happens when a network reaches maturity? Does the positive feedback loop continue indefinitely, or do other forces come into play? What happens when the network becomes too large, too complex, too fragmented? These are questions we will begin to address in our next exploration, as we delve into the challenges of managing and sustaining network ecosystems. Chapter 2. Game Theory 101. Foundations of Strategic Interaction. Welcome back. Last time, we touched upon the fundamental role of individual choice under scarcity. Now, let us broaden our perspective, moving from the solitary decision-maker to the intricate dance of interconnected agents. We enter the realm of game theory, and specifically, the captivating arena of network games, where the value we derive from something depends critically on how many others are using it too. Think of it as a web, each node a participant, each strand a connection influencing, and being influenced by, the others. The core concept we will explore tonight is the idea of strategic complementarity. This simply means that my decision to adopt a particular behavior, a particular technology, or even a particular viewpoint becomes more attractive the more others have already done the same. Consider the humble telephone. What use is it if you're the only one with a receiver? Its utility blossoms exponentially as more people join the network. This seemingly simple principle gives rise to a suite of fascinating dynamics. Chief among them is the phenomenon of coordination. Imagine a small town deciding on a preferred time for the weekly market. Everyone benefits if they coordinate, if they choose the same time. But how do they get there? Several times might seem equally good a priori. This leads us to consider coordination games. In such games, multiple equilibria can exist. Everyone attending the market on Tuesday is just as good as everyone attending on Wednesday, provided we all choose the same day. The challenge lies not in finding the best outcome in an absolute sense, but in aligning expectations and achieving mutual consistency. Now, consider a slightly different scenario, the adoption of a new technology. Perhaps it's a software platform or a new energy source. Here, we encounter the intriguing concept of tipping points. At low levels of adoption, the network effect is weak. The benefits of using the new technology are overshadowed by its initial costs, the learning curve, or simply the inertia of sticking with the familiar. However, as adoption increases, so does the value to each user. More applications are developed, more complementary services become available, and the technology becomes more embedded in the wider ecosystem. At some critical threshold, the tipping point, a self-reinforcing cycle, kicks in. The bandwagon effect takes hold, and adoption accelerates rapidly, propelled by the sheer momentum of the network. The technology tips into widespread use. This tipping dynamic carries immense implications for the emergence of platform dominance. A platform, in this context, is simply a technology or a standard that facilitates interactions between different groups of users. Think of operating systems, social media networks, or online marketplaces. Because of these network effects, the first platform to reach critical mass often gains a significant and potentially insurmountable advantage. The platform with the most users attracts the most developers, who in turn create more applications, which then attract even more users. This virtuous cycle can lead to a winner-take-all scenario, where one platform becomes the de facto standard, effectively locking out competitors, even if those competitors possess superior technology. This presents a complex challenge for the policymaker. On one hand, platform dominance can stifle innovation and limit consumer choice. On the other hand, attempting to artificially intervene in the market can disrupt the delicate balance of the network and potentially harm the overall ecosystem. How do we foster competition without sacrificing the benefits of network effects? The classical economist might argue for a laissez-faire approach, trusting in the inherent dynamism of the market to eventually dislodge any dominant player. However, the history of technology is replete with examples of entrenched monopolies that have resisted even the most concerted challenges. The study of network games forces us to confront the fundamental tensions between individual incentives and collective outcomes. It highlights the power of coordination, the fragility of tipping points, and the enduring challenge of managing platform dominance. As we move forward, let us consider the role of information asymmetry within these networks. How does incomplete knowledge of others' intentions and behaviors shape the evolution of network dynamics? This is a question to ponder as we navigate the complexities of our interconnected world. Chapter 3: Network Effects, Metcalfe's Law, and Beyond. Yes. Last time, we touched upon the rather intriguing phenomenon of increasing returns to scale. Now, let us delve deeper into a specific and potent instantiation of this principle: network effects. Think of it as the echoes of value reverberating outwards as more individuals connect to a shared system. It's within this domain that we encounter what we might term network games. These aren't games in the frivolous sense, but rather strategic interactions shaped profoundly by the presence and influence of a network. Consider for a moment a simple telephone. One telephone is intrinsically useless. It's a lonely instrument, incapable of fulfilling its purpose. But add a second, and suddenly a connection is forged. Utility blossoms. Metcalfe's Law, a helpful, though perhaps overly simplistic, yardstick, suggests that the value of a network increases roughly with the square of the number of users. This, while not always perfectly accurate in practice, captures the fundamental dynamic. The more who participate, the more valuable the network becomes for everyone. It's a positive feedback loop, a gently accelerating spiral. Now, this brings us to coordination. In many network scenarios, the primary hurdle is not inherent technological superiority, but rather persuading individuals to adopt a common standard. Think of the early days of video recording formats, VHS and Betamax. Betamax, arguably technologically superior, lost the format war not due to inherent flaws, but because VHS, through strategic alliances and broader adoption, achieved a critical mass of users and content. This illustrates a crucial point. Networks reward coordination. The collective decision, often influenced by seemingly small initial advantages, can have profound and lasting consequences. This coordination process often involves tipping points. Imagine a seesaw, delicately balanced. A small nudge in one direction can, if sustained, eventually cause a dramatic shift. In network games, these tipping points represent thresholds of adoption. Once a network surpasses a certain size, the benefits of joining become overwhelmingly clear, creating a bandwagon effect. Users flock to the dominant network, driven by the desire to connect, communicate, and participate in the expanding ecosystem. This, in turn, further strengthens the leading network and weakens its competitors. The classical economist might call this a path dependency, where initial conditions heavily influence the final outcome. And this brings us to the concept of platform dominance. Platforms, in this context, are essentially networks facilitating interactions between different groups of users. Think of a social media platform connecting individuals, or an e-commerce marketplace connecting buyers and sellers. The power of network effects on these platforms can be immense. Once a platform establishes a significant user base, it becomes increasingly difficult for competitors to dislodge it. The costs of switching, both in terms of lost connections and familiarity, are simply too high for many users. This can lead to winner-take-all, or winner-take-most scenarios, where a single platform dominates the market. The implications of platform dominance are complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, a dominant platform can foster innovation and efficiency, allowing for greater specialization and economies of scale. On the other hand, it can also lead to reduced competition, higher prices, and a stifling of alternative approaches. The policymaker faces the delicate task of balancing these competing concerns, seeking to promote innovation and consumer welfare, while mitigating the potential risks of monopoly power. This often involves careful consideration of antitrust laws and regulatory interventions, a balancing act akin to walking a tightrope across a chasm. The network game, then, is not merely about technology, or even just about economics. It's about psychology, sociology, and the complex interplay of individual and collective action. It's a dance of coordination, tipping points, and the pursuit of that elusive goal, platform dominance. But, as these networks evolve, and technology continues its relentless march forward, what new forms of economic organization will emerge from the digital ether? What challenges and opportunities will they present? That, dear friends, is a question for another night. Chapter 4. The Power of Positive Feedback Loops. We've gently traced the contours of market competition, observing how forces push and pull at supply and demand, seeking that elusive equilibrium. Now let's drift our attention towards situations where balance is, well, less of a priority. Where imbalance, ironically, is the driving force. We are speaking of network games, phenomena built on the powerful engine of positive feedback loops. Imagine a gently flowing stream. A small obstruction deflects the current. The diverted water erodes the bank, making the obstruction larger, deflecting more water, causing more erosion. This is the essence of a positive feedback loop, an initial advantage, however slight, amplified by its own consequences. In network economics, this amplification often leads to coordination problems, tipping points, and, ultimately, platform dominance. Consider the simple act of choosing a language. Early adopters might select a language based on perceived simplicity or cultural resonance. But as more individuals learn and use that language, the benefits increase for everyone. More learning resources become available, more opportunities for communication arise, and the language becomes increasingly valuable simply by virtue of its wider adoption. This is a network effect in action. The value of the network to each user increases with the number of users. This brings us to coordination problems. Imagine two teams, each developing a new technology. Both technologies are equally viable, but they are incompatible. Everyone would benefit if they both coordinated and used the same technology, but absent any coordination, this is unlikely. The situation is further complicated if the technology with the initial lead, even a small one, is likely to become the standard. Without clear communication and agreement, they might end up investing in the wrong technology. In the absence of perfect information, the early advantage can be critical, regardless of the objective merits. These early advantages can lead to something called a tipping point. Think of a glass slowly filling with water. For a long time, nothing dramatic happens. But eventually, one more drop causes the water to spill over. Similarly, in a network market, one technology or platform might hold a slight lead for a considerable time. But at a certain point, the advantage becomes self-reinforcing, triggering a cascade of adoption that overwhelms competing options. The market tips in favor of the dominant player. Consider, for a moment, the early days of video formats. VHS and Betamax, Live. Both were perfectly reasonable technologies, offering ways to record television programs and watch movies at home. But VHS, through a combination of factors, slightly longer recording times, lower production costs, and perhaps even a bit of luck, gained a small initial advantage. This advantage then amplified through a positive feedback loop. More video rental stores stocked VHS tapes, attracting more consumers, incentivizing more manufacturers to produce VHS players, and so on. Eventually, Betamax, despite arguably being a technically superior format, became obsolete. This tendency towards dominance raises important questions for the policymaker. Should the state intervene to prevent the emergence of monopolies, even if those monopolies arise organically from network effects? The classical economist might argue against intervention, suggesting that the market will eventually correct itself. New, even better technologies will emerge, and the cycle will begin anew. However, the inertia of established networks can be substantial, potentially stifling innovation and consumer choice for extended periods. Platform dominance, therefore, becomes a critical concern. A dominant platform can dictate terms, control access, and extract rents, potentially hindering the growth of smaller players and even suppressing competing innovations. The policymaker must carefully weigh the benefits of scale and efficiency against the risks of market power and potential abuse. The question of how to balance these competing interests remains a central challenge in the digital age. We've explored the dynamics of positive feedback loops, tipping points, and the path to platform dominance. But what happens once a platform achieves dominance? Does it remain immutable, a monolithic entity forever impervious to disruption? Or do new forces emerge, subtly undermining its foundations, setting the stage for the next cycle of competition and transformation? This, perhaps, is where our thoughts should drift next. Chapter 5. Coordination Games. Driving on the right side of the road. Ah, yes. We were just discussing the beauty of game theory in revealing strategic interactions. Consider that the foundation laid. Now we ascend to a slightly higher vantage point. We will explore a specific, yet pervasive, manifestation of strategic thinking. Coordination games and how they shape the economic landscape through networks and tipping points. Think of it as understanding how we all collectively decide to drive on the same side of the road. At its heart, a coordination game is a scenario where the optimal strategy for each participant depends entirely on what everyone else is doing. There's often no inherently best choice in isolation. Instead, value arises when individuals align their actions. The road example serves as the archetypal instance. Is driving on the left inherently superior to driving on the right? No. What is superior is that everyone chooses the same side. Diverge leads to chaos, frustration, and potentially far worse consequences. The payoff is minimized by lack of coordination and maximized by its presence. This isn't about beating your opponent. It's about synchronizing with them. This is the dance of coordination. Now, let's consider this concept in a broader economic context. Think of standards. The VHS versus Betamax battle, the adoption of QWERTY keyboards, the prevalence of certain operating systems. These aren't always cases of technologically superior options prevailing. Often, they are examples of coordination games where network effects amplify the value of the dominant choice. The more people use a particular technology, the more useful it becomes to everyone else. This is the essence of a network effect. Consider the humble telephone. A single telephone is essentially useless. Two telephones, slightly less so. But a telephone network connecting millions becomes an invaluable tool. This illustrates how the utility of a product or service increases with the number of users. This positive feedback loop is a powerful engine, driving adoption and potentially leading to market dominance. But how does a particular standard win? This is where the concept of a tipping point becomes crucial. Imagine a scale, delicately balanced. Initially, small fluctuations occur. One standard might gain a slight advantage, then the other. But at some critical threshold, a tipping point is reached. This is the point where the momentum shifts decisively towards one option. The slight advantage transforms into a cascade, rapidly pulling the entire market in that direction. Think back to the VHS versus Betamax scenario. While many argued that Betamax offered superior picture quality, VHS gained a foothold due to its longer recording time and the strategic decision by manufacturers to produce a wider range of VHS players. This initial advantage, however slight, triggered a positive feedback loop. More VHS players meant more VHS tapes were produced, which in turn made VHS players more attractive to consumers. The market tipped towards VHS, ultimately relegating Betamax to a niche market. This tipping point dynamic has significant implications for platform dominance. A platform, in this context, is a business model that facilitates interactions between two or more distinct groups of users. Think of ride-sharing apps connecting drivers and passengers, or social media platforms connecting users with content creators. Platforms thrive on network effects. The more users a platform attracts, the more valuable it becomes to all participants. Once a platform establishes a significant user base, it becomes exceedingly difficult for competitors to dislodge it. The existing platform benefits from strong network effects, creating a barrier to entry for newcomers. This can lead to a winner-takes-all or winner-takes-most scenario, where a single platform dominates the market. Consider the early days of social media. Several platforms vied for dominance, but eventually, one emerged as the clear leader. This dominance wasn't necessarily due to superior technology, but rather to its ability to attract and retain a critical mass of users. The network effects solidified its position, making it challenging for competitors to gain traction. The classical economist, observing this phenomenon, might lament the potential for monopolies and the stifling of innovation. The policymaker, on the other hand, grapples with the challenge of fostering competition while recognizing the inherent advantages of network effects. It's a delicate balancing act, requiring careful consideration of antitrust laws, interoperability standards, and data portability. So, we've navigated the intricacies of coordination games, network effects, and tipping points. We've seen how these forces shape the economic landscape, creating both opportunities and challenges. As we prepare to move forward, let us ponder: what are the ethical implications of such dominance? And how do we ensure a fair and equitable digital economy in this era of powerful network effects? A question for our next rendezvous, perhaps. Sleep well. Chapter 6. Shelling Points. The art of unspoken agreement. Having explored the nuanced world of information asymmetry, we now turn our attention to situations where information is not the primary constraint, but rather, the challenge lies in aligning expectations. These are the realms of network games, where coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance intertwine. Imagine a vast open field. You and a stranger are told to meet somewhere within it, at an unspecified time. You have no means of communication. Where do you go? The most likely answer, the one most of us would instinctively choose, is the most salient landmark, perhaps the largest tree, or the center of the field itself. This instinctive choice, this intuitive focal point, is what we call a shelling point, named after the insightful strategist who first articulated its significance. It's a solution that arises not from explicit agreement, but from shared cognitive understanding, a silent pact born of logical deduction. In economic contexts, shelling points reveal themselves in the dynamics of coordination games. Consider, for instance, the adoption of a new technology. Several competing standards might exist, each potentially offering similar benefits, but the value of each standard dramatically increases as more people adopt it. This is the essence of a network effect. The utility of a product or service is directly proportional to the number of users. Think of social media platforms, or the early days of video recording formats. VHS triumphed over Betamax, not necessarily because it was technologically superior, but because it achieved critical mass, a tipping point where the perceived benefits of joining the larger network outweighed any inherent advantages of the competing standard. Tipping points are crucial moments in network games. They represent a phase transition, a shift in equilibrium, where a small change in circumstances can lead to a disproportionately large effect. Before the tipping point, the network is fragile, vulnerable to disruption. After it, the network becomes robust, self-reinforcing. The classical economist might analyze this using rational choice theory, seeing individuals weighing the costs and benefits of joining a particular network. But the psychological dimension, the herd mentality, the fear of being left behind, plays a significant role in accelerating the process. These dynamics frequently lead to platform dominance, where a single player captures a significant share of the market. This dominance isn't necessarily a result of superior products or services, but rather of clever strategies to achieve and maintain a critical mass of users. Early adoption incentives, strategic partnerships, and viral marketing campaigns can all contribute to establishing a dominant position. Once established, this dominance creates a powerful feedback loop. The more users a platform has, the more valuable it becomes, attracting even more users and further solidifying its lead. The policymaker must grapple with the implications of platform dominance. On the one hand, network effects can lead to increased efficiency and innovation. A standardized platform allows for greater interoperability, reduces transaction costs, and fosters a vibrant ecosystem of complementary products and services. On the other hand, unchecked dominance can stifle competition, lead to exploitative pricing, and reduce consumer choice. The challenge lies in striking a delicate balance, fostering innovation while preventing the emergence of monopolies that stifle progress. Consider the ongoing debates surrounding data privacy and platform regulation. The very data that fuels the growth of these platforms also raises concerns about security, control, and the potential for misuse. Finding solutions requires us to understand the underlying economic forces at play, to recognize the selling points around which users gravitate, and to design policies that promote both innovation and fairness. The digital landscape is constantly evolving, with new technologies and business models emerging at an accelerating pace. We must always be asking ourselves, what are the new selling points forming? What are the next tipping points on the horizon? How do we navigate this complex terrain to ensure that the benefits of network effects are shared broadly and that the risks are managed effectively? The answers to these questions will shape the future of our interconnected world. And perhaps they will be answered best by turning to the very architecture of networks themselves for guidance. But that, perhaps, is a question for another time. Chapter 7: Evolutionary Game Theory: The Survival of the Fittest Strategies. Our introduction. Yes. We've journeyed through individual choices, the dance of supply and demand. Now, let's zoom out. Imagine not just players, but populations of players, each trying out different strategies. That, in essence, is the realm of evolutionary game theory. Here, we move from static equilibrium to dynamic adjustment, where success breeds imitation and failure leads to extinction. It's a world of constant flux, where the fittest strategies, not necessarily the fairest, survive. And nowhere is this more evident than in the fascinating field of network games. Network games, coordination. Think for a moment about the humble telephone. Its value lies not in its individual existence, but in its connection to others. This, my friends, is the essence of a network effect. The more people who use a product or service, the more valuable it becomes to everyone else. This creates a strong incentive for coordination. We all want to be on the same page, using compatible technologies, speaking the same language, or indeed, participating in the same social network. But how do we achieve this coordination? Often, it's a slow, iterative process. Individual actors experiment, observe the outcomes, and adjust their strategies accordingly. Those who choose compatible options thrive, while those who go it alone risk isolation and obsolescence. Tipping points. A delicate balance. Now, imagine a gently sloping landscape. On one side lies a valley representing one network standard, on the other side, another. Initially, the population might be scattered across this landscape, with some favoring one standard, some the other. But as more and more people gravitate towards one valley, a tipping point is reached. The momentum builds. The pull becomes irresistible, and soon, nearly everyone is cascading down into that valley, abandoning the other. These tipping points are often difficult to predict and even harder to control. A seemingly minor event, a key endorsement, a technical breakthrough, a clever marketing campaign, can be enough to tip the balance and trigger a rapid shift in the entire system. The classical economist, with their assumptions of perfect rationality, often struggles to grasp these dynamics. The policymaker, meanwhile, might try to nudge the system in a particular direction, but must tread carefully, lest their interventions inadvertently trigger an unintended cascade. Platform dominance. The winner takes all. In the digital age, these network effects are amplified by the rise of platform businesses. These are not merely producers of goods or services. They are architects of ecosystems, connecting buyers and sellers, creators and consumers. Consider the dominant social media platforms, or the leading app stores. They benefit from strong network effects. The more users they attract, the more attractive they become to developers and advertisers, which in turn attracts even more users. This creates a powerful feedback loop, leading to a concentration of power in the hands of a few dominant players. The question then becomes, is this dominance sustainable? Does it lead to innovation or stagnation? Does it serve the interests of the many or the few? These are complex questions, and there are no easy answers. The policymaker, armed with antitrust legislation and regulatory tools, must grapple with these issues, seeking to balance the benefits of network effects with the need to promote competition and protect consumers. Evolutionary processes and the lock-in effect. This entire process mimics evolution. A novel strategy emerges, gains traction, and spreads through the population. Successful strategies are imitated and refined, while less successful ones fade away. But this process isn't always efficient. Sometimes, a suboptimal strategy can gain an early advantage and become locked in, even if a superior alternative exists. This is known as the lock-in effect, and it can be a significant barrier to innovation. Think of the QWERTY keyboard layout, designed to prevent typewriter jams, which persists despite the existence of more efficient alternatives. In network industries, this lock-in effect can be particularly strong, as the cost of switching to a new standard or platform can be prohibitively high. Conclusion and the lingering question. So, we see how evolutionary game theory offers a powerful lens for understanding the dynamics of network games. It highlights the importance of coordination, the fragility of tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. It reminds us that the market is not a static entity, but a constantly evolving ecosystem, where strategies compete, adapt, and ultimately determine who thrives and who perishes. But one question lingers in the air. As these digital ecosystems evolve, are we truly progressing towards more efficient and beneficial outcomes? Or are we merely selecting for strategies that maximize short-term profits at the expense of long-term sustainability? This is a question we will continue to explore as we delve into the next phase of our journey, the exploration of information economics. Early examples: telegraphs, telephones, and railways. Having considered the theoretical landscape of network games, the interconnectedness, the feedback loops, the delicate balance of coordination, let us now turn our attention to the real world, to the tangible manifestations of these concepts in the nascent industrial age. Think of this chapter as a gentle stream, flowing from abstract principle towards concrete example. We will examine three pivotal technologies: the telegraph, the telephone, and the railways. Each offers a unique perspective on coordination, tipping points, and the emergence of platform dominance. Remember our conceptual bridge, the idea that value increases with participation. Observe how this principle shaped these very different industries. The telegraph, perhaps the earliest large-scale communication network, illustrates the power of coordination in its purest form. A single telegraph terminal, isolated and unconnected, is essentially worthless. Its value resides entirely in its ability to communicate with other terminals. The more nodes in the network, the more valuable each individual node becomes. This is a classic example of positive network externalities. The challenge, of course, was to achieve critical mass, to reach the tipping point where the benefits of joining the network outweighed the costs. The policymaker played a vital role in fostering this coordination, often through subsidies, standardization efforts, and even outright nationalization, particularly in Europe. The goal was to ensure interoperability and to prevent the fragmentation of the network into incompatible systems. The telegraph, therefore, became a powerful tool of government, commerce, and even military strategy, its influence rippling outwards from the points of contact. Next, consider the telephone. While sharing similarities with the telegraph, the positive network externalities remain paramount. The telephone introduced a new layer of complexity. Unlike the telegraph, which primarily served businesses and governments, the telephone had the potential to connect individuals directly. This created a more dynamic and unpredictable environment. The tipping point for the telephone was not merely about achieving a certain number of users, but about reaching a critical density of users within specific geographic areas. A telephone in a rural village with few other subscribers was far less useful than one in a bustling city. The interplay between geographic density and network effects created localized tipping points, leading to rapid adoption in some areas and slower growth in others. The early telephone companies faced a complex strategic challenge: how to expand their networks efficiently, targeting areas where the potential for rapid growth was greatest. The classical economist might view this as a natural process of market selection, but it was also a highly strategic game involving investment decisions, pricing policies, and even the deliberate exclusion of competitors. The telephone, therefore, became a symbol of modernity, its wires weaving a web of connection across continents. Finally, let us turn our attention to the railways. While not strictly a communication network, the railways share many of the same characteristics. A railway line is only valuable if it connects important destinations, facilitating the movement of goods and people. The more extensive the railway network, the greater the potential benefits for all users. The railways also illustrate the importance of standardization. The adoption of a uniform gauge, for example, was crucial for ensuring interoperability and preventing the creation of isolated networks. The lack of such standardization in some regions hampered the development of the railway system. Furthermore, the railways demonstrate the potential for platform dominance. A railway company that controls key routes or terminals can exert considerable influence over the entire network. This creates opportunities for strategic pricing, access control, and even the exclusion of competitors. The emergence of powerful railway monopolies in the late 19th century led to calls for government regulation, highlighting the tension between the benefits of network effects and the potential for abuse of market power. The rails hummed with the possibility of both progress and peril. These three examples, the telegraph, the telephone, and the railways, offer valuable insights into the dynamics of network games. They illustrate the importance of coordination, the power of tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. They also highlight the role of the policymaker in shaping the development of these networks, balancing the benefits of innovation with the need to ensure fair access and prevent abuse. As we move forward, we must consider how these lessons apply to the digital networks that now dominate our lives. How does the rise of the internet, with its decentralized architecture and global reach, compare to the centralized networks of the past? What new challenges and opportunities do these digital networks present? And how can we ensure that these networks serve the interests of all, not just a privileged few? As we drift gently into the next chapter, remember to keep the flow of this question running. Chapter 9. The Rise of Personal Computing. A new arena for network affects the digital revolution, simmering for decades, finally boiled over in the late 20th century with the advent of the personal computer. More than just a technological marvel, the PC inaugurated a new era of networked interactions, transforming markets and creating opportunities for unprecedented scale and dominance. Within this transformation, the economic principles of network games, coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance found fertile ground to flourish, shaping the landscape of the digital world. Let us begin with coordination. In the early days of personal computing, a fragmented ecosystem prevailed. Different operating systems, different hardware architectures, different software packages, a chaotic tapestry of incompatible technologies. For consumers, this presented a significant challenge. Which platform to choose? The answer hinged not merely on technical superiority, but on the expectation of widespread adoption. A word processor with limited user base, however elegant its design, was ultimately less valuable than a more commonplace option that facilitated easy file sharing and collaboration. This inherent pull towards a shared standard exemplifies the core of a network effect. The value of a good or service increases as more people use it. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. Imagine a gently sloping hill. A small push might not move a rock far, but as the slope steepens, the same push can send it tumbling down. Similarly, in a network game, a critical mass of users can trigger a cascade of adoption, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. One operating system begins to gain traction, attracting more software developers, who in turn create more applications, further enticing users, and so on. This momentum can lead to a tipping point, beyond which one platform accelerates its dominance while others struggle to catch up. Wow. Until. Adloto. How. Consider the evolution of operating systems. Several contenders vied for supremacy in the early PC market. Some were technically innovative, others elegantly designed. Yet, one platform eventually surpassed the rest, not necessarily because of innate superiority, but because it achieved a critical mass of users and applications. This established a powerful network effect, locking in users and developers and creating a formidable barrier to entry for competitors. Now, let's turn our attention to platform dominance. A platform, in this context, acts as an intermediary, connecting different groups of users. Think of an operating system as a platform connecting software developers and end users. Or consider a video game console connecting game developers and players. The platform that successfully attracts both groups can establish a powerful position, extracting value from both sides of the market. This often leads to the creation of what economists call a winner-take-all or winner-take-most dynamic. The classical economist might argue that such dominance is ultimately detrimental to consumers, leading to higher prices and reduced innovation. The policymaker, concerned with maintaining competitive markets, might consider interventions to level the playing field, promoting interoperability and preventing anti-competitive practices. But the inherent nature of network effects makes this a delicate balancing act. Intervention can stifle innovation, potentially harming consumers in the long run. The rise of personal computing offered a powerful illustration of network effects in action, where coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance reshaped industries and created new economic realities. The lessons learned in this arena continue to resonate in the digital age, informing our understanding of online marketplaces, social media platforms, and the evolving landscape of the information economy. The forces at play are subtle, demanding a careful consideration of incentives, expectations, and the delicate balance between competition and innovation. The challenge lies in fostering an environment where innovation thrives, while mitigating the potential downsides of unchecked platform dominance. But what happens when computing becomes truly ubiquitous, permeating every aspect of our lives, dissolving the boundaries between the physical and digital worlds? How do these network effects manifest in such a hyper-connected environment? These are the questions that await us as we delve into the next phase of our economic journey. Chapter 10. The Internet's Dawn. TCP, IP, and the power of open standards. Having contemplated the implications of information asymmetry in the prior session, let's now turn our attention to the very fabric upon which that information flows, the Internet itself. Specifically, we'll explore the Internet's genesis through the lens of network economics, examining how its foundational principles fostered coordination, navigated crucial tipping points, and ultimately avoided the pitfall of platform dominance by a single entity. Think of it as a delicate dance of technologies and incentives, carefully choreographed to produce a remarkably open and innovative ecosystem. The story begins with a problem. Disparate computer networks, each speaking its own language, unable to communicate with one another. This technological Tower of Babel hindered progress. The solution, however, wasn't a proprietary, centrally controlled system. Instead, it was the Transmission Control Protocol Internet Protocol, or TCP/IP, a suite of open standards that provided a common language for these networks to communicate. The key here is open. Anyone could implement TCP/IP, modify it, and build upon it without needing permission or paying royalties. This openness fostered coordination on an unprecedented scale. Imagine a vast, interconnected lake. Each tributary represents a different network, and TCP/IP is the channel that allows water, or, in this case, data, to flow freely between them. This coordinated flow created immense value. Suddenly, researchers at different universities could easily share data, businesses could communicate more efficiently, and individuals could connect with one another across vast distances. It was a prime example of positive network externalities. The value of the network increased exponentially with each new participant. But the path wasn't without its challenges. The adoption of TCP/IP faced a crucial tipping point. Before a critical mass of networks adopted the protocol, its value was limited. Why learn a new language if only a few people speak it? However, once enough networks embraced TCP/IP, the benefits became undeniable. This transition required careful planning and a degree of faith in the nascent technology. Government funding and the support of key academic institutions played a vital role in pushing the system past this critical point. The investment paid off handsomely, setting the stage for the explosive growth of the internet. Now, let's consider the potential for platform dominance. Had a single company or organization controlled TCP/IP, they could have leveraged their control to stifle innovation and extract rents from the entire ecosystem. They could have, in essence, built a toll booth on the information highway. The beauty of TCP/IP, however, lay in its decentralized nature. Because it was an open standard, no single entity could control it. Anyone could create competing implementations, ensuring a healthy level of competition and preventing any one player from becoming too powerful. It was a deliberate choice, a rejection of centralized control in favor of distributed innovation. This open architecture had profound implications for the subsequent development of the internet. It allowed for a Cambrian explosion of new applications and services, from email to the World Wide Web. Entrepreneurs could build on top of the TCP/IP foundation without needing to ask permission, leading to a remarkably diverse and innovative ecosystem. This is a stark contrast to more closed and proprietary systems, where innovation is often constrained by the gatekeepers of the platform. Furthermore, the success of TCP/IP demonstrates the power of open standards in fostering economic growth. By creating a level playing field, open standards encourage competition, innovation, and widespread adoption. They allow resources to flow freely to their most productive uses, benefiting society as a whole. The classical economist would surely appreciate the efficiency gains facilitated by such a system, while the policymaker would nod approvingly at the distributed power structure. As we conclude, consider the implications of the TCP/IP model for subsequent technological developments. Did the lessons of the Internet's dawn, the importance of open standards, coordination, and the avoidance of platform dominance, carry over to the next phases of the digital revolution? Or did new challenges and incentives lead to different outcomes? That, perhaps, is a question best explored in our next encounter. Chapter 11. Email. The first killer app for network coordination. We've explored the foundational elements of network effects, the virtuous cycles that can propel a technology from obscurity to ubiquity. But how do these abstract forces manifest in tangible economic landscapes? Tonight, we turn our attention to a pivotal moment in Internet history, the rise of email. It serves as an elegant, almost archetypal example of network games, coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. Think of the early days of networked computers. Isolated islands of processing power, capable of incredible feats of computation, yet largely disconnected from one another. The promise of true synergy, of collaborative problem-solving across vast distances, remained just out of reach. Email, in its rudimentary form, offered the first glimpse of that potential. It was more than just an electronic letter. It was a bridge, a channel for coordinated action. The essence of a network game lies in the interdependent nature of the players. The value each participant derives is directly proportional to the number of other participants connected to the network. This is readily apparent with email. A single email account, isolated and alone, is essentially worthless. It is only when others possess email accounts, when a network begins to form, that the utility of the individual account begins to climb. The more people you can reach, the more valuable your email address becomes. A classic coordination problem unfolds. This coordination challenge is not always solved organically. Individuals, weighing the cost of adoption against the perceived benefits, might rationally choose to remain outside the network. This is where the concept of a tipping point becomes crucial. Imagine a gently sloping hill. Initially, the slightest push downwards elicits only a minor roll. But as the slope steepens, the ball gains momentum, eventually accelerating rapidly. Similarly, in network adoption, there often exists a threshold. Below this point, growth is slow and arduous. Above it, the network takes on a life of its own, propelled by self-reinforcing feedback loops. Early email systems, often proprietary and limited to specific institutions or organizations, struggled to reach this tipping point. They were islands within islands, unable to achieve the critical mass needed for widespread adoption. The development of standardized protocols, such as SNTP, played a vital role in breaking down these barriers. These protocols allowed different email systems to interoperate, creating a unified, globally accessible network. This interoperability was a key catalyst, triggering the exponential growth that would eventually make email an indispensable communication tool. The classical economist might argue that the benefits of a larger email network are purely external, enjoyed by all users, regardless of who initially invested in its growth. This is a classic example of positive externality. However, the incentives to invest in developing and promoting email were not solely altruistic. Early providers, like AOL and CompuServe, saw email as a valuable tool for attracting and retaining customers within their walled gardens. By offering email as part of a broader package of online services, they aimed to establish platform dominance. And here we see the subtle shift from simple coordination to strategic competition. The network effect, while initially fostering collaboration, can ultimately lead to the concentration of power. Platforms that manage to capture a significant share of the network can leverage their position to extract rents, control access, and shape the future evolution of the technology. The policymaker, grappling with questions of antitrust and market regulation, faces the challenge of balancing the benefits of network effects with the potential for anti-competitive behavior. Email, in its open and decentralized nature, managed to resist the complete dominance of any single platform. The standardized protocols allowed for a relatively level playing field, fostering innovation and preventing any one entity from completely controlling the ecosystem. However, the emergence of email marketing and spam filtering, and later the increasing reliance on specific email clients and mobile apps, demonstrates the ongoing tension between openness and control. Thus, email stands as a profound case study, a microcosm of the broader dynamics at play in network economies. It illuminates the power of coordination, the importance of tipping points, and the ever-present struggle for platform dominance. Looking ahead, as we consider the next generation of network technologies, we might ask, will these new systems embrace the spirit of open collaboration that characterized the early days of email? Or will they succumb to the siren call of centralized control, ushering in a new era of platform monopolies? Perhaps the answer lies in understanding the delicate balance between innovation and regulation, a balance that continues to shape the very fabric of our digital world. The World Wide Web, hyperlinks, and exponential growth. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the sprawling, interconnected realm of the World Wide Web. Having explored the foundational concepts of game theory, we now apply these principles to understand the unique economic forces at play in this digital landscape. Remember our discussion of strategic interaction? The web, in its essence, is a vast and intricate game, a network game driven by coordination, tipping points, and the potential for dramatic platform dominance. Consider the humble hyperlink. A simple click, yet it embodies the very essence of network effects. The value of a website isn't merely in its content, but in its interconnectedness with other websites. Each hyperlink is a connection, strengthening the overall web and increasing the value of participating. This is a classic example of positive network externalities. As more websites link to each other, the usefulness, the utility of the entire network grows exponentially. Coordination becomes paramount. To understand this, imagine a fledgling social media platform. Its initial value is minimal. Only a few users, limited content, a digital ghost town. But as more people join, the platform gains critical mass. Friends connect, discussions flourish, and the platform becomes the place to be. This is the tipping point. The moment when a network effect triggers rapid adoption. It's a fragile state, highly sensitive to external shocks, or a better alternative suddenly appearing. The policymaker often wrestles with these dynamics. Should they intervene to support early-stage platforms? Or should they allow the market to organically select the most efficient solutions? The answer, as always, lies in a delicate balance. Premature intervention can stifle innovation, while inaction can allow dominant players to entrench their position, potentially stifling competition in the long run. Now, let us consider the phenomenon of platform dominance. In a network game with strong network effects, a single platform can often capture a disproportionate share of the market. Think of the dominant search engine, the ubiquitous social media giant, or the leading e-commerce marketplace. These platforms benefit from a virtuous cycle. More users attract more content providers, which in turn attracts more users, and so on. This creates a powerful barrier to entry for potential competitors. The dominant platform becomes the de facto standard, shaping the digital landscape. The classical economist might argue that such dominance is simply the outcome of superior efficiency and innovation. The platform that best serves its users will naturally rise to the top. However, critics argue that network effects can create a winner-take-all dynamic, where even a slightly superior platform can quickly eclipse its competitors, regardless of long-term innovation. The initial advantage, compounded by network effects, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Understanding these network effects is crucial for navigating the digital economy. They influence everything from pricing strategies to product development to regulatory policy. The challenge for businesses is to harness these effects to create sustainable competitive advantages. The challenge for policymakers is to foster innovation and competition, while preventing monopolies from stifling progress. The internet, you see, is not just a collection of websites. It's a complex ecosystem, a dynamic interplay of forces where connections are currency and critical mass is destiny. Each click reverberates, amplifying or diminishing, creating ripples across the digital ocean. This interconnectedness fosters unprecedented opportunities, but also poses unique challenges. The platform owner wields considerable influence, curating information, facilitating transactions, and perhaps most importantly, shaping the very flow of information itself. As we stand on the precipice of the next technological revolution, with the dawn of artificial intelligence and the metaverse on the horizon, one question lingers. Will these same network dynamics continue to shape the future of the digital economy, or will new forces emerge to reshape the landscape once more? The browser wars. Netscape versus Internet Explorer. Good evening. Let us transition, if you will, from the granular world of individual consumer choice to the broader landscapes of industry dominance. We've touched upon how preferences are shaped, but now we must examine how those shapes can solidify into near immutable forms. Tonight, we'll explore this through the lens of the late 20th century, browser wars, a conflict that perfectly illustrates the economic principles of network games, coordination problems, tipping points, and, ultimately, the establishment of platform dominance. Think of the internet browser as a particularly potent node in a vast network. Its value isn't simply in its ability to display text and images, but in its gateway function, connecting users to the ever-expanding web of content and applications. This inherent connectivity creates what economists call a network effect. The more people use a particular browser, the more valuable it becomes, not just to each user, but also to content creators. Developers are incentivized to optimize their websites and applications for the most popular browser, further cementing its position. This is the foundational principle of a network game. The payoff for participation increases as the network expands. Initially, Netscape Navigator held a commanding lead. It was the browser of choice, familiar, and, for the time, functional. Its ubiquity fostered a positive feedback loop. More users, more developer attention, more features, even more users. But dominance in network economies is rarely a guaranteed permanence. The landscape is prone to sudden shifts, to dramatic realignments governed by forces often subtle but deeply powerful. Enter Internet Explorer, backed by the considerable resources and, arguably, a more integrated vision of a future dominated by operating systems. The battle wasn't solely about superior technology. It was about strategic leverage and the skillful manipulation of network effects. One tactic in particular proved decisive: the bundling of Internet Explorer with the Windows operating system. This effectively reduced the marginal cost of acquiring the browser to zero for millions of users. This bundling strategy addressed a key coordination problem. Many potential users might have been hesitant to switch browsers, even if Internet Explorer offered advantages, due to the perceived cost and effort. By bundling it, the policymaker effectively removed this barrier, creating a path of least resistance. This subtle nudge, was enough to start shifting the balance of power. The concept of a tipping point is crucial here. In systems exhibiting network effects, there's often a critical mass, a point where a small change in user adoption can trigger a cascade, leading to widespread adoption of one platform over another. Internet Explorer, propelled by bundling, reached this tipping point. As its user base grew, developers increasingly focused on optimizing for it, making it even more attractive to new users, and further diminishing the value of Netscape. The initial lead evaporated. Consequences of this shift were profound. Microsoft achieved platform dominance, not necessarily through technological superiority, but through strategic maneuvers that exploited the inherent dynamics of network effects and the challenges of coordination. This allowed them to exert considerable influence over the direction of web development, and arguably, to stifle innovation for a time. The classical economist might argue this was simply the outcome of market forces, but the policymaker might point to the potential for anti-competitive behavior within these dynamics. This dominance, however, was not immutable. The seeds of future disruption were already being sown. The limitations and proprietary nature of Internet Explorer, along with the rise of open-source alternatives like Firefox, eventually eroded its dominance. But that, as they say, is another story. A story for another evening. For now, consider this. How does the very nature of a platform, whether it's open and flexible or closed and controlled, influence its long-term viability in an environment characterized by constant technological change? We will explore this interplay further in our next discourse. Search engines. Google's algorithm and information dominance. We've explored the mechanics of information goods, their unique cost structures, and replicability. Now, let us turn our attention to the vessels that deliver this information to our fingertips. Search engines, specifically Google, and how its dominance exemplifies the principles of network games. Imagine a placid lake, slowly but inexorably drawn towards a single central drain. That drain, in this context, is Google. The economic landscape of search engines is governed by what we term network effects. These effects arise when the value of a good or service increases as more people use it. Think of a telephone. One telephone is useless. Two are marginally better. A network of telephones connecting millions becomes invaluable. Search engines operate under a similar principle. The more users engage with a particular search engine, the more data it collects about search patterns, user preferences, and website relevance. This richer dataset allows the search engine to refine its algorithms, delivering more accurate and relevant results. These better results, in turn, attract more users, creating a positive feedback loop. This is the essence of a network game, a self-reinforcing cycle where early advantages can solidify into long-term dominance. Coordination is key within these network games. Users implicitly coordinate their search behavior, gravitating towards the platform perceived as offering the best results. This coordination isn't typically orchestrated by any central authority. It emerges organically through individual choices. Consider the alternatives. Many search engines have existed. Few have achieved the critical mass necessary to compete effectively with the dominant player. This isn't merely about technological superiority, although that is undoubtedly a fact. It's about the perceived utility by the user base, which is heavily influenced by the size and quality of the network it serves. The larger the network, the better the data, the better the results, and thus, the larger the network grows. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. In a network game, a tipping point represents a threshold. Once a certain level of adoption is reached, the network experiences accelerated growth, making it increasingly difficult for competitors to gain traction. Google, arguably, crossed such a tipping point early in its history. Its superior algorithm, combined with its user-friendly interface, allowed it to attract a critical mass of users. This initial advantage then compounded over time, creating a near-insurmountable barrier to entry for rival search engines. The implications of this platform dominance are far-reaching. The dominant search engine wields significant influence over the flow of information. It effectively acts as a gatekeeper, determining which websites are visible to users and which remain buried in the digital depths. This power raises important questions about algorithmic bias, censorship, and the potential for manipulation. The classical economist might argue that market forces will eventually correct any imbalances, that innovation will lead to the emergence of new, superior platforms. However, the strength of network effects makes this a challenging proposition. Incumbents, like Google, possess vast resources and an established user base, allowing them to adapt and maintain their position. The policymaker, recognizing the potential for abuse, might advocate for regulatory intervention, such as antitrust measures or requirements for algorithmic transparency. However, such interventions must be carefully considered, as they risk stifling innovation and inadvertently harming consumers. The challenge lies in finding the right balance between promoting competition and preserving the benefits of a large, efficient search engine. Think of a finely tuned instrument. Too much pressure and it breaks, too little and it fails to resonate. The governance of these powerful platforms requires a similar delicate touch. Ultimately, the dominance of Google in the search engine market serves as a compelling case study in network games. It illustrates the power of network effects, the importance of coordination, the concept of tipping points, and the potential consequences of platform dominance. It leaves us contemplating the next evolution of the digital economy. What new technologies or business models might disrupt the established order? Would decentralization, artificial intelligence, or something else entirely reshape the landscape of information access? The waters are calm now, but the tides are always shifting. Social media emerges, connecting the world, one profile at a time. Previously, we examined the burgeoning information age, a digital dawn that promised unprecedented access and efficiency. Now, we find ourselves at a new confluence, a place where technology and human connection intertwine in complex and often unpredictable ways. Our focus shifts to social media and the underlying economic principles that govern its rise, specifically network games, coordination, tipping points, and the pursuit of platform dominance. Consider, for a moment, the fundamental allure of a network. It's not merely a collection of individuals, but a web of interconnected nodes, each contributing to the value of the whole. This concept, deeply rooted in network economics, manifests vividly in the social media landscape. The utility a user derives from a platform isn't fixed, it's dynamic, increasing as more people join. This positive feedback loop, where adoption fuels further adoption, is the very essence of a network effect. It's like a tranquil stream, growing stronger and wider as more tributaries feed into it. But the flow isn't always smooth. Network games often hinge on coordination. Imagine a group of individuals, each deciding whether to adopt a new technology. The value they receive depends on the choices of others. If only a few adopt, the benefit is negligible. However, if a critical mass embraces the technology, the network effect kicks in, making participation highly desirable. This creates a coordination problem. How do we ensure enough people adopt early on to trigger this positive feedback loop? The answer often lies in initial incentives, strategic marketing, and the creation of a perceived advantage that encourages early adoption. The classical economist would note the inherent inefficiencies if left to complete laissez-faire. Some nudge is often required. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. A tipping point represents a threshold, a critical level of adoption beyond which the network experiences rapid and often irreversible growth. Before the tipping point, the platform may struggle, battling for relevance. But once crossed, the momentum shifts, and the platform can quickly become dominant. Think of a forest, dry and vulnerable to fire. A single spark might smolder harmlessly, but a confluence of factors, wind, dry leaves, accumulated brush, can create conditions where one spark ignites an uncontrollable blaze. Similarly, a social media platform might languish for years, only to explode in popularity after a seemingly minor event. The policymaker often seeks to understand, and sometimes influence, these tipping points. However, prediction is a perilous game. Human behavior is complex, influenced by myriad factors, from cultural trends to chance encounters. Modeling these dynamics requires sophisticated tools and a healthy dose of humility. Now, let's turn our attention to platform dominance. The social media landscape is characterized by a winner-take-most dynamic. Once a platform achieves critical mass, it becomes exceedingly difficult for competitors to dislodge it. This dominance stems from several factors. First, network effects create a strong barrier to entry. Users are reluctant to switch to a new platform if their friends and family are already established elsewhere. Second, platforms often leverage data and algorithms to personalize the user experience, further reinforcing their position. Third, the development of ancillary services, advertising, e-commerce, content creation tools, creates a sticky ecosystem that locks users in. This concentration of power raises important questions about competition and innovation. While dominant platforms can offer significant benefits, seamless communication, access to vast networks, personalized content, they can also stifle innovation by acquiring or imitating potential rivals. The careful observer would also point out the potential for the development of filter bubbles and echo chambers, where users are primarily exposed to information that confirms their existing beliefs, reinforcing polarization. Regulators often grapple with the challenge of balancing the benefits of network effects with the need to promote competition and protect consumers. Finding the right balance is a delicate art, requiring a nuanced understanding of the underlying economics and the potential long-term consequences of intervention. As we conclude this chapter, consider the relentless evolution of the digital landscape. The social media platforms of today may be supplanted by new technologies and paradigms tomorrow. What new forms of connection will emerge, and what economic principles will govern their rise? This is a question we'll continue to explore as we navigate the ever-changing currents of the digital age. Chapter 16. Facebook's growth engine. Network effects and user engagement. The digital landscape, much like a vast ecosystem, is shaped by forces both visible and subtle. Among the most potent is the principle of network effects, a concept deeply interwoven with what we call network games. Imagine a pond, still and reflect. A single pebble creates a ripple, a small effect. But if many pebbles are dropped in a coordinated manner, the ripples amplify, creating waves that reshape the pond's surface. This, in essence, is the essence of network effects. Network effects, in their simplest form, describe the phenomenon where the value of a product or service increases as more people use it. Consider a telephone. Its value is minimal, if only one person owns it. But as more individuals acquire telephones, the utility for each user rises exponentially. They can connect with a broader network, exchange information, and participate in a larger community. This brings us to the heart of network games, scenarios where individual choices are interdependent, and the collective outcome depends on coordination, or sometimes a lack thereof. Think of choosing a language. It's advantageous to learn a language spoken by many, increasing your ability to communicate and access information. This creates a positive feedback loop, driving more people to adopt the dominant language, further enhancing its value. In the context of platforms like Facebook, network effects are profoundly amplified. The platform's value proposition, connecting with friends, sharing experiences, joining communities, becomes exponentially more attractive as the user base expands. Each new user enhances the network for existing members, creating a powerful incentive for continued engagement and new signups. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of growth, driven by the intrinsic desire for connection. However, this dynamic introduces the concept of tipping points. Picture a scale, delicately balanced. Due out high. At first, the addition of users might have a linear impact, but once a certain threshold is crossed, the balance tips dramatically. Suddenly, the platform becomes indispensable, a ubiquitous presence in the digital lives of its users. This tipping point signifies a critical mass, a point of no return where the platform's dominance becomes almost assured. This leads us to a crucial consideration: platform dominance. Once a platform achieves critical mass and establishes a strong network effect, it becomes incredibly difficult for competitors to dislodge it. The incumbent enjoys a significant advantage, often referred to as a moat, a protective barrier that shields it from rival incursions. This advantage stems from the high switching costs for users. Leaving a platform where all your friends and contacts reside involves severing established connections, a prospect many find undesirable. Furthermore, the dominant platform can leverage its vast user base to expand into adjacent markets, offering new services and features that further entrench its position. The platform becomes an ecosystem, a self-contained environment where users can satisfy a multitude of needs, from social networking to communication to entertainment. This expansion reinforces the network effects, making the platform even more valuable and more difficult to challenge. Consider the perspective of the policymaker. The rise of dominant platforms raises important questions about market power, competition, and consumer welfare. Are these platforms leveraging their dominance to stifle innovation, extract excessive profits, or manipulate user behavior? These are complex questions that require careful analysis and thoughtful regulation. We see then that the digital economy is not a static landscape. It's a dynamic system, constantly evolving, shaped by the interplay of technological innovation, user behavior, and market forces. Network effects, tipping points, and platform dominance are powerful concepts that help us understand the dynamics of this ecosystem. The classical economist understood these patterns long before the digital era, observing them in other industries and contexts. But what happens when these dominant platforms encounter new technologies, shifting user preferences, or disruptive innovations? Does the pendulum eventually swing back, creating opportunities for new entrants to challenge the established order? This is a question we will explore in the subsequent chapters, delving into the intricacies of platform evolution and the ever-changing dynamics of the digital economy. Twitter, real-time information, and the power of the hashtag. Let us for a moment gently pivot from our consideration of information asymmetries to another crucial aspect of the modern information economy: the dynamics of network platforms. We spoke of lemons and adverse selection. Now, consider the bustling digital agora that is Twitter, and how it exemplifies the complex interplay of coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance, key facets of what economists term network games. Imagine, if you will, a small village square. A lone merchant arrives, hoping to sell their wares. But who will buy? The value of the merchant's presence hinges on the presence of potential customers, and their presence in turn depends on the perceived value of the merchant's goods. This is the essence of a network effect. The value of a service or product increases as more individuals adopt it. Twitter, in its digital form, acts as such a village square, scaled to a global dimension. Consider the concept of coordination. For Twitter to function effectively, users must agree, implicitly, on certain protocols. The most potent of these is the hashtag. This simple symbol, the transforms a random phrase into a searchable, categorized thread. Its true power, however, lies in its ability to facilitate collective action, to coordinate conversations around events, social movements, or shared interests. The hashtag is, in essence, a coordination device, lowering the transaction costs of finding like-minded individuals and organizing around common goals. Think of the Arab Spring or the Me Too movement. Without the hashtag, these global conversations would have been fragmented, diffused, and ultimately less impactful. But how does a platform like Twitter achieve critical mass? This brings us to the concept of tipping points. Initially, a new platform may struggle to attract users. Each new arrival is a tiny victory, but the network effect remains weak. However, as adoption grows, a threshold is reached. Suddenly, the platform becomes noticeably more useful, more engaging, more valuable. This is the tipping point, a moment of non-linear growth, where the network effect kicks into high gear. The reasons are varied. It might be the presence of influential early adopters, the availability of compelling content, or simply the perceived coolness of being part of the in-group. Once a platform surpasses this tipping point, it enters a phase of rapid expansion. This expansion is often driven by positive feedback loops. More users attract more content, which in turn attracts more users. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle, making it increasingly difficult for rival platforms to compete. The result, quite frequently, is platform dominance, a situation where one platform controls a significant share of the market. This dominance is not necessarily malicious, but it does raise important questions about competition, innovation, and the distribution of power. Consider the implications for the classical economist. In a perfectly competitive market, multiple firms would offer similar services, driving down prices and ensuring consumer welfare. But network effects can disrupt this equilibrium. A dominant platform may be able to leverage its size to extract rents, stifle competition, and even influence public discourse. This creates a tension between the benefits of network effects, increased efficiency, greater connectivity, and the potential costs of market concentration. For the policymaker, these dynamics present a unique set of challenges. How can we promote competition in the age of network dominance? Should we regulate dominant platforms, and if so, how? What role should antitrust policy play in ensuring a level playing field? These are complex questions with no easy answers. The digital landscape is constantly evolving, and policymakers must adapt to keep pace. The challenge lies in fostering innovation while mitigating the risks of market power. As we conclude, ponder this: the real-time information flow and hashtag-driven coordination, facilitated by platforms like Twitter, represent a new phase in economic organization. But is this the final form? Or are we on the cusp of yet another transformation, driven by new technologies and evolving user behaviors? What new forms of coordination and competition will emerge in the next stage of the digital economy? Chapter 18: The Mobile Revolution. Smartphones and app stores. The hum of modern life is, to a significant degree, the quiet vibration of a smartphone. This ubiquitous device, more powerful than room-sized computers of yesteryear, serves as a portal to a universe of information and interaction. But beyond its functionality, the smartphone era offers a compelling case study in network economics, specifically in network games, the interplay of coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. Consider the very essence of a smartphone. Its value isn't solely intrinsic. It's exponentially amplified by the number of other people using compatible devices and applications. This is network externality in its purest form. The more individuals adopt a particular smartphone operating system, the more attractive that system becomes to developers. These developers, in turn, create applications that enhance the device's utility, drawing in even more users, creating a virtuous cycle. This echoes the arguments made by the classical economist, who understood that value resides as much in the interaction between economic agents as it does in the inherent qualities of a good. However, this cycle is not always smooth. Coordination is key. For a network to thrive, participants must largely coalesce around a common standard or platform. Early mobile operating systems faced a fragmentation problem. A multitude of platforms vied for dominance, leading to uncertainty among both users and developers. This uncertainty stifled innovation and limited the network's overall potential. The policymaker, observing this chaotic landscape, might have considered interventions to foster a more unified ecosystem, though such actions always carry the risk of stifling nascent innovation. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. In any network game, there often exists a critical mass of users or applications that, once surpassed, triggers a rapid acceleration of adoption. Imagine a slow-flowing river reaching a precipice. Once enough water accumulates, the river spills over, transforming into a cascading waterfall. Similarly, a mobile platform might linger in relative obscurity until a particularly compelling application emerges, or until a competitor stumbles. This single event can trigger a sudden influx of users, propelling the platform to a position of dominance. Observe the history of app stores. These digital marketplaces, initially a novel concept, became central to the smartphone ecosystem. They represent a curated environment where developers can connect with users and monetize their creations. The design and functionality of these app stores significantly influence the coordination dynamics within the platform. A well-designed store lowers transaction costs, making it easier for developers to reach users and for users to discover valuable applications. This, in turn, accelerates the virtuous cycle described earlier. And now, platform dominance. Network effects often lead to winner-take-most or winner-take-all scenarios. Once a platform establishes a significant lead in terms of users and applications, it becomes exceedingly difficult for competitors to catch up. The incumbent enjoys a powerful advantage: a large and engaged user base, a vibrant developer community, and a wealth of data that can be used to further optimize the platform. This creates a significant barrier to entry for new platforms, reinforcing the incumbent's dominance. This, of course, raises concerns for the policymaker, who must balance the benefits of network efficiency with the potential for anti-competitive behavior. The current mobile landscape is a testament to the power of these forces. A few dominant platforms control the vast majority of the smartphone market, shaping the way we communicate, consume information, and interact with the world. The strategies employed by these platforms, from App Store policies to hardware innovation, continue to shape the direction of the mobile revolution. They are intricate, delicate systems, balancing innovation with market control. But as technology advances, we must consider what new platforms will emerge to challenge the current incumbents. What will be the tipping points that reshape the mobile landscape once more? Chapter 19. App Store Economies. Apple versus Google tonight. We consider the seemingly simple, yet profoundly complex, world of app stores. Specifically, we will analyze the economic principles at play, focusing on the inherent network effects, the subtle dynamics of coordination, the perilous allure of tipping points, and the ever-present quest for platform dominance. Our case study, naturally, centers on the contrasting approaches of Apple and Google, the titans of this digital ecosystem. Let us begin with network effects. In essence, a network effect describes a situation where the value of a product or service increases as more people use it. Think, for instance, of the early days of the telephone. A single telephone is essentially useless. Its value only emerges as others acquire telephones, creating a network of interconnected users. App stores, in their very nature, are rife with network effects. The more users an app store has, the more attractive it becomes to developers. And conversely, the more developers populate an app store with compelling applications, the more appealing it becomes to users. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle, a positive feedback loop that can drive explosive growth. However, the presence of network effects also introduces the challenge of coordination. Imagine a small orchestra. Each musician, playing independently, produces only noise. It is only through coordinated effort, guided by a conductor, that they create harmonious music. Similarly, in the App Store ecosystem, developers and users must coordinate their actions. Developers need to create apps that users want, and users need to be able to find and download those apps. The platform, in this case the App Store, acts as the conductor, facilitating this crucial coordination. Apple, with its tightly controlled App Store, takes a more dirigista approach, actively curating the selection of apps and enforcing strict guidelines. Google, on the other hand, adopts a more laissez-faire approach, allowing a wider range of apps, but potentially sacrificing some degree of quality control. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. In complex systems, a small change can sometimes trigger a disproportionately large effect. Think of a single snowflake triggering an avalanche. In the context of app stores, a tipping point might occur when one platform achieves a critical mass of users or developers, making it virtually impossible for competitors to catch up. The classical economist might argue that the platform with the best product, in terms of functionality or user experience, is destined to win. But best is a subjective judgment, and consumer choices are rarely purely rational. Factors such as marketing, brand loyalty, and even sheer luck can play a significant role in determining which platform reaches that crucial tipping point. The pursuit of platform dominance is the inevitable consequence of these dynamics. Once a platform achieves a dominant position, it can wield considerable power. The policymaker, watching from the sidelines, might become concerned about potential abuses of this power, such as charging excessive fees or stifling innovation. The question of how to regulate these dominant platforms without stifling the very innovation that created them is a complex and ongoing debate. Apple and Google, in their own ways, have each faced scrutiny from regulatory bodies around the world, accused of anti-competitive practices. The challenge lies in finding the right balance between fostering competition and allowing platforms to reap the rewards of their investments. Consider the differing monetization strategies employed by Apple and Google. Apple generates a significant portion of its revenue from hardware sales and the commission it charges on in-app purchases. Google, on the other hand, relies more heavily on advertising revenue, generated both within the App Store and across its broader ecosystem. These differing business models have profound implications for the incentives of developers and the types of apps that thrive on each platform. This also impacts consumer behavior, influencing the types of apps they choose to download and how they interact with them. Ultimately, the App Store economy is a dynamic and evolving landscape. New technologies, such as augmented reality and artificial intelligence, are constantly creating new opportunities and challenges. The rise of alternative app stores and the increasing prevalence of web-based applications are also reshaping the competitive landscape. The platforms that can best adapt to these changes, while simultaneously navigating the complex web of network effects, coordination challenges, and regulatory pressures, will be best positioned to thrive in the long run. Chapter 20. Messaging, Apps, WhatsApp, WeChat, and Global Communication. An introduction. Friends, we drifted last time through the subtle currents of information asymmetry. Now let's navigate to the shores of network effects, a landscape especially vibrant in the realm of messaging applications. Our focal points tonight are WhatsApp and WeChat, two titans of digital communication, and we'll observe how their success illustrates its utility isn't intrinsic, it's derivative. It's valuable because other people use it. This is the essence of a coordination game. The classical economist might describe it as a situation where individuals benefit most when they align their actions with those of others. Think of it as choosing which side of the road to drive on. It doesn't inherently matter which side, only that everyone agrees. With messaging apps, if your friends and family all use WhatsApp, its value to you increases dramatically. Conversely, if you're the only one using a particular platform, its utility dwindles to almost nothing. This coordination problem is solved, often unconsciously, through collective adoption. Tipping points. The journey of a messaging app from obscurity to ubiquity is often marked by a tipping point. This is a critical threshold beyond which adoption accelerates exponentially. Before this point, growth might be slow and arduous, a gradual accumulation of users. But once a certain mass is reached, perhaps triggered by a viral campaign, a crucial feature, or simply word of mouth, the network effect kicks into overdrive. Each new user significantly enhances the value proposition for potential adopters, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Think of a fragile arch. It bears little weight until the keystone is placed, suddenly transforming the entire structure into a strong, self-supporting entity. Identifying and harnessing this tipping point is crucial for aspiring platforms. Platform dominance. The battle for platform dominance in the messaging app space is fierce. Once a platform establishes a significant lead, the network effect acts as a powerful moat, protecting its position. It becomes increasingly difficult for competitors to dislodge the incumbent, even with superior technology or innovative features. The switching costs, both explicit and implicit, become prohibitive. Asking your entire social network to migrate to a new platform is a Herculean task. WeChat, for example, achieved dominance in China by integrating a vast array of services, payments, social networking, even government services, making it indispensable for daily life. This creates a formidable barrier to entry for rivals. The policymaker might observe that this dominance, while convenient for users within the ecosystem, can also raise concerns about potential monopolies and anti-competitive behavior. WhatsApp, WeChat. Consider the different trajectories of WhatsApp and WeChat. WhatsApp focused initially on providing a simple, reliable messaging service, achieving global reach by prioritizing ubiquity across devices and platforms. WeChat, conversely, embraced a super app strategy, building a comprehensive ecosystem within its messaging platform, becoming deeply ingrained in the fabric of Chinese society. Both approaches highlight the power of network effects, but also illustrate different strategic choices in navigating the landscape of digital communication. Conclusion. These two platforms, and many others, demonstrate how the principles of network games shape the modern digital economy. The dynamics of coordination, the pivotal role of tipping points, and the enduring quest for platform dominance are fundamental forces at play. However, the digital landscape is ever shifting. As we begin to consider the emerging landscape of decentralized technologies, one begins to wonder, will these established platforms maintain their dominance in the face of a new wave of innovation? What will it take for a truly decentralized messaging platform to achieve widespread adoption and challenge the status quo? That is something to contemplate as we drift into the night. EDA. Online marketplaces, eBay, Amazon, and the long tail. Welcome, friends, to our continued exploration of the digital economic landscape. Last time, we considered the transformative power of search costs, how their reduction reshaped the flow of information, and consequently, the flow of commerce. Tonight, we turn our gaze to the vast online marketplaces that have sprung up, fueled by this very reduction in search costs, and examine them through the lens of network games, coordination, tipping points, and the alluring, yet sometimes precarious, state of platform dominance. Settle in. Let's begin. Consider for a moment the quiet hum of a traditional marketplace. Sellers gather, each offering their wares. Buyers circulate, seeking out the best deals. This system functions, but it often suffers from limitations of geography and scale. Online marketplaces, like eBay and Amazon, transcend these constraints, connecting buyers and sellers across vast distances. However, their success isn't simply about overcoming physical barriers. It's about harnessing the power of network effects, and this is where the concept of network games becomes crucial. A network game, in essence, is a situation where the value of a product or service increases as more people use it. The telephone is a classic example. A single telephone is useless. Its value grows exponentially as more people connect to the network. Online marketplaces exhibit this characteristic profoundly. The more sellers that participate, the more attractive the marketplace becomes to buyers, drawn by the wider selection and competitive pricing. Conversely, the more buyers that participate, the more attractive the marketplace becomes to sellers, seeking a larger audience for their goods. This creates a virtuous cycle, a self-reinforcing loop that can propel a platform to dominance. However, the path to dominance is rarely smooth. It often involves a delicate dance of coordination. Consider a new online marketplace attempting to gain traction. It needs to attract both buyers and sellers simultaneously. If it attracts sellers but few buyers, the sellers will leave, discouraged by the lack of sales. Conversely, if it attracts buyers but few sellers, the buyers will become frustrated by the limited selection. This is the classic chicken and egg problem, and its solution lies in finding ways to coordinate the participation of both groups. Early subsidies, targeted marketing campaigns, and strategic partnerships can all play a role in kickstarting this process. Tipping points are critical junctures in this process. Imagine a gradual increase in the number of users on a platform. Initially, the growth is slow and incremental, but at some point, the network effects reach a critical mass, a tipping point. Suddenly, the platform's growth accelerates exponentially. It becomes the de facto standard, the place everyone goes to buy and sell. This is when platform dominance begins to solidify. Platform dominance, however, is not necessarily a permanent state. A dominant platform, once established, enjoys significant advantages, including economies of scale, brand recognition, and data advantages. These advantages can create powerful barriers to entry, making it difficult for new competitors to emerge. However, complacency and a failure to innovate can erode even the strongest of positions. Furthermore, the very network effects that propelled a platform to dominance can also become its Achilles heel. A shift in consumer preferences, a technological disruption, or the emergence of a superior competing platform can trigger a reversal of the network effects, leading to a decline in usage and a loss of market share. Think of the many once dominant platforms that have faded into obscurity, reminders that even the most successful ventures are not immune to the forces of creative destruction. Amazon, for instance, has successfully navigated the complexities of online retail, leveraging network effects, mastering logistics, and diversifying into cloud computing and other areas. eBay, on the other hand, while still a significant player, has arguably ceded ground to Amazon, struggling to adapt to changing consumer preferences and the rise of specialized online marketplaces. These marketplaces also play a pivotal role in understanding the long tail of commerce. The classical economists traditionally focused on mass market products with high demand, readily available, and easily compared. The internet, however, empowers niche markets with lower individual demand, but, cumulatively, represent a substantial market share. Online platforms excel at connecting buyers and sellers within these niche markets, facilitating transactions that would be impossible in the traditional brick-and-mortar world. This expanded economic landscape, where the cumulative value of niche markets surpasses that of blockbuster products, is a key characteristic of the digital economy. As we conclude, consider this. While we've explored the dynamics of online marketplaces and the drive towards platform dominance, might we be on the cusp of another shift? What new models might emerge, challenging the established giants and further decentralizing the digital economy? It's a question that will guide our investigations next time, as we delve deeper into the evolving nature of online ecosystems. Sleep well, and let the ideas percolate. Chapter 22. The Sharing Economy. Airbnb, Uber, and Disruption. Having considered the intricacies of imperfect competition, we now turn our attention to a fascinating contemporary phenomenon, the sharing economy. This sphere, epitomized by platforms like Airbnb and Uber, presents a compelling case study for understanding the dynamics of network games, a concept crucial to grasping modern economic power. Network games are, at their heart, about coordination. The value of a product or service isn't inherent. It depends on the number of other people using it. Consider a simple example: the telephone. A single telephone, isolated from all others, is utterly useless. Its value blossoms with each additional connection. This interdependency creates a powerful self-reinforcing loop, a cascade that can reshape entire markets. Within this framework lies the concept of a tipping point. Imagine a gently sloping hill. A ball placed near the summit might roll in either direction, left or right, depending on the smallest perturbation. The summit is a tipping point. Similarly, in a network game, there exists a critical mass of users. Below this threshold, the network offers insufficient value, hindering growth. Above it, however, the network effect kicks in, creating exponential adoption. The platform becomes increasingly attractive as more people join, leading to a rapid, often irreversible shift. This tipping point dynamic explains, in part, the dominance we observe in many platform markets. Once a platform surpasses this critical mass, it becomes incredibly difficult for competitors to challenge its position. Think of the ride-hailing industry. A user is likely to choose the platform with the greatest availability of drivers in their area. Drivers, in turn, are drawn to the platform with the largest pool of potential riders. This creates a virtuous cycle for the dominant platform, making it incredibly difficult for smaller players to gain traction. The classical economist might view this as a natural consequence of efficiency, a testament to the power of market forces. However, the policymaker must also consider the potential for monopolistic behavior and the erosion of consumer choice. Platform dominance, therefore, is not simply a matter of superior technology or clever marketing. It's often a direct result of the network effect, amplified by the inherent difficulty in coordinating users across multiple platforms. Imagine trying to convince half of your social circle to switch to a new social media platform. The friction is substantial. The benefit of the new platform must be extraordinarily high to overcome the inertia of the established network. This dominance creates a complex landscape for innovation. While the initial surge of the sharing economy often fosters disruptive innovation, challenging established industries and creating new value propositions, the subsequent consolidation can stifle competition. The dominant platform, secure in its position, may become less responsive to user needs or less inclined to pursue truly radical innovations. The dynamic entrepreneur, always seeking an edge, might find opportunities in niche markets or by exploiting unforeseen technological advancements. However, overcoming the network effects of the incumbent remains a daunting challenge. The sharing economy, then, offers a valuable lens through which to examine the interplay of coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. It highlights the power of network effects in shaping market outcomes and raises important questions about the role of policy in ensuring competition and promoting innovation. We are left to ponder, as this era unfolds, what new models of decentralized cooperation might emerge to challenge the concentrated power of today's dominant platforms. What new form of shared economy, perhaps built on principles of truly distributed ownership and control, might be on the horizon? Chapter 23: Platform Business Models. An overview. Good evening. We've been tracing the contours of value creation in the modern economy, and tonight we arrive at a particularly fascinating landscape: platform business models. These digital ecosystems, woven from code and connection, exhibit unique economic properties, and at the heart of their dynamics lie network effects, which bring us to the notion of network games. Imagine, if you will, a pond. A single pebble creates a ripple. Now imagine many pebbles dropped in sequence, each ripple interacting, amplifying, or dampening the others. This, in essence, is a network game. These aren't games in the playful sense, but rather complex, strategic interactions where the value derived by each participant is profoundly influenced by the decisions of others. The defining characteristic here is coordination. Each user, each participant, implicitly asks, "What are others doing?" The more participants on a particular platform, the more attractive it becomes for newcomers. This creates a self-reinforcing loop, a positive feedback mechanism that can lead to rapid growth. Think of the early days of telephone networks. One phone is a novelty, but a network of phones transforms communication itself. This illustrates the power of network effects and the coordination challenge they represent. However, the path to platform dominance isn't always smooth. We often encounter tipping points. Picture a scale, delicately balanced. For a time, multiple platforms might coexist, each offering similar services. Users are split. The system is in a state of equilibrium. But then, a small shift occurs. Perhaps a feature enhancement, a clever marketing campaign, or simply a critical mass of users switching allegiance. The scale tips decisively. Suddenly, one platform becomes overwhelmingly dominant, leaving others struggling to survive. This tipping point is a crucial moment, a bifurcation point, where the system transitions from a state of competition to one of near monopoly. The classical economist might view this as the inevitable outcome of superior efficiency, but the policymaker must consider the potential for anti-competitive behavior and the long-term consequences for innovation. Platform dominance, once achieved, is often difficult to dislodge. The winner takes all, or at least winner takes most, dynamic is a powerful force. This isn't merely a matter of technological superiority. It's about the network effect itself. Users become locked in, not by contractual obligations, but by the sheer inertia of the network. Switching platforms means abandoning connections, losing access to valuable data, and disrupting established workflows. This creates a significant barrier to entry for new competitors. Consider the example of social media. Early on, numerous platforms vied for attention. Each offered a slightly different approach to connecting people. But as one platform gained traction, its network effects began to snowball. Friends joined, content accumulated, and the platform became an indispensable part of daily life. Other platforms, despite offering potentially superior features, struggled to compete with this established network. The challenge they faced wasn't simply building a better product, it was overcoming the coordination problem, convincing users to collectively switch to a new, unproven alternative. This raises important questions about regulation and antitrust policy. How do we prevent platforms from abusing their dominant position? How do we foster innovation in a world where network effects create such formidable barriers to entry? These are not easy questions to answer. The traditional tools of antitrust, designed for industries with physical assets and linear supply chains, often prove inadequate in the digital realm. New frameworks are needed, frameworks that account for the unique characteristics of network effects and the dynamic nature of platform competition. The policymaker needs to consider these implications carefully. Tonight, we've just scratched the surface of network games and platform dominance. We've seen how coordination, tipping points, and network effects combine to shape the digital economy. But what happens after dominance is achieved? What are the long-term consequences of these winner-takes-all dynamics? And what new forms of value creation will emerge in the next phase of the digital revolution? These are questions to contemplate as we move forward. Good night. Winner-take-all markets, dynamics and consequences. Tonight, we turn our attention to a peculiar phenomenon that has come to define so much of our modern economy, the winner-take-all market. Remember how we spoke of perfect competition, of equilibrium delicately balanced? Well, here, that balance tilts, often irrevocably, towards a single victor. And at the heart of this dynamic, often pulsing with unseen forces, lies the concept of network games. Imagine a game, not of skill, perhaps, but of coordination. The value each participant derives isn't inherent in their individual choices, but in how well their choices align with those of everyone else. Think of language, for example. A language only holds value if others speak it too. Its utility expands with each new speaker, reinforcing its dominance. This, in essence, is a network effect. The value of a network, quite simply, increases with the number of participants. Now, within these network games, the idea of coordination becomes paramount. It's not simply about choosing the best option in isolation, but about anticipating what everyone else will do. This introduces an element of expectation, a self-fulfilling prophecy. If enough people believe a particular network will succeed, their very belief contributes to its success, drawing in even more participants. Consider, for a moment, the early days of operating systems. Several contenders vied for supremacy. Each had its merits, its advantages. But the one that managed to garner early adoption, to establish a critical mass of users and developers, ultimately prevailed. The initial advantage, however small, became a cascade, a flow gradually swelling into a torrent. We call this tipping point. Tipping points are fascinating junctures. They represent moments of instability, where small nudges can have disproportionately large effects. Below the tipping point, resistance to change remains significant. Above it, the inertia shifts, and adoption accelerates. It's akin to water gradually filling a vessel. At first, the addition of each drop is barely noticeable. But as the vessel nears its capacity, a single drop can cause it to overflow. And what emerges from this dynamic? Often, platform dominance. A platform, in our context, is an ecosystem that facilitates interactions between different groups of users. Think of a social media platform, connecting individuals with each other and with content creators. Or an e-commerce platform, bridging buyers and sellers. These platforms thrive on network effects. The more users they attract, the more valuable they become to both sides of the equation, fueling further growth. The classical economist might argue that this dominance simply reflects superior efficiency or value. But the reality is often more nuanced. Initial luck, clever marketing, or even strategic alliances can play a decisive role in establishing an early lead. And once a platform reaches a certain size, the network effects become so powerful that competitors struggle to gain traction. This isn't to say that competition is entirely absent. Innovation can disrupt even the most entrenched platform. A new technology, a novel user experience, a different business model, any of these can potentially challenge the existing order. But the barriers to entry are often formidable. The established platform enjoys a significant advantage in terms of user base, data, and brand recognition. So, what are the consequences of this winner-take-all dynamic? For consumers, it can mean convenience and lower prices, at least initially. A dominant platform can often achieve economies of scale, passing on some of the savings to its users. But it can also lead to reduced choice, higher prices in the long run, and a concentration of power in the hands of a few corporations. The policymaker wrestles with the challenge of balancing the benefits of network effects with the potential for anti-competitive behavior. How to foster innovation and competition without stifling the growth of promising platforms. How to ensure that the benefits of these technologies are shared broadly, rather than accruing solely to a select few. These are complex questions with no easy answers. We find ourselves at a crossroads. The digital landscape, shaped by network effects and tipping points, presents both opportunities and challenges. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for navigating the economic landscape of tomorrow. As we drift into the next session, consider this. What role will regulatory bodies play in the unfolding drama of the digital economy, particularly in the realm of artificial intelligence and automation? Chapter 25. Tipping Points. When small changes lead to big shifts, we've explored the individual's dance with incentives, the delicate ballet of supply and demand. But economies are seldom solitary endeavors. They're vast, interconnected webs, where the choices of one individual reverberate, sometimes subtly, sometimes catastrophically, through the entire system. Tonight, we'll delve into the fascinating realm of network games, a place where the value of something increases as more people adopt it, a realm governed by coordination, tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. Imagine a new language. Speaking it alone provides little benefit. Its worth blossoms only as more people learn and use it, creating a community, facilitating trade, sharing knowledge. This, in essence, is the core of network effects. A telephone, a social media platform, a particular operating system, all possess increasing value as their user base expands. Network games, unlike traditional economic models, often exhibit multiple equilibria. Think of choosing between two standards, say VHS and Betamax back in the days of videotapes. Both offered similar functionality. But the key was, which one would more people choose? The classical economists might suggest rational actors weigh all costs and benefits and converge on the objectively superior technology. But reality is often far more nuanced. Initial advantages, perhaps due to marketing or a lucky break, can trigger a cascade effect. As more people choose one standard, it becomes more attractive to newcomers, creating a positive feedback loop. The network grows, the value increases, and eventually, a tipping point is reached. A tipping point, that elusive threshold, marks the moment when a small change precipitates a large, often irreversible shift. Below the tipping point, the system remains relatively stable, resistant to change. Above it, the slightest nudge can send it hurtling towards a new equilibrium. Consider a crowded theater. Everyone is seated, enjoying the performance. But if someone shouts fire, a single, small event, panic can ensue. People rush for the exits, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of fear and flight. The initial shout becomes the catalyst for a chaotic and potentially dangerous situation. In the context of network games, understanding tipping points is crucial for both businesses and the policymaker. For businesses, identifying and leveraging these points can be the key to achieving platform dominance. Early adopters, strategically targeted marketing, and interoperability can all play a role in tilting the playing field in one's favor. Imagine a new ride-sharing app entering a market already dominated by existing players. To succeed, it might offer substantial discounts to attract a critical mass of users, hoping to reach the tipping point where the network effect kicks in and new users join organically. However, platform dominance is not always beneficial from a societal perspective. A single dominant platform can wield significant power, potentially stifling innovation, raising prices, and controlling access to information. Consider the potential dominance of a single social media platform. It might use its market power to limit competition, censor content, or exploit user data. The policymaker must therefore navigate a delicate balance, fostering innovation and competition, while mitigating the risks associated with unchecked platform power. This requires careful consideration of antitrust laws, data privacy regulations, and the potential for interoperability standards. For example, requiring dominant messaging platforms to interoperate with smaller competitors could reduce their market power and promote greater choice for consumers. Similarly, Strong data privacy regulations can prevent platforms from exploiting user data and creating unfair competitive advantages. Ultimately, network games are a testament to the interconnected nature of our economies. They highlight the importance of coordination, the power of positive feedback loops, and the potential for both immense value creation and significant societal risks. Understanding the dynamics of tipping points and the factors that influence them is essential for navigating this complex landscape. But what happens when these dominant platforms, nurtured by network effects, themselves become the infrastructure upon which entire economies depend? What new challenges and opportunities arise when the platform is the playing field? We'll explore that next time. Critical mass. Reaching the point of no return, we've previously explored the foundational building blocks of markets, the push and pull of supply and demand. But what happens when the value of a good isn't inherent in its intrinsic properties, but rather dependent on the number of other people using it? This takes us into the fascinating realm of network games, economic landscapes defined by coordination, tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. Imagine a tranquil lake. A single pebble dropped into the still water creates a small ripple. Now, imagine a series of pebbles, each influencing and amplifying the other's effects. This is analogous to the dynamics of network effects. A network good's value increases as more individuals adopt it. Think of the early days of the telephone. A single telephone is essentially useless. Its utility blossoms only when others connect to the network. This interconnectedness creates a powerful force, a self-reinforcing cycle of growth. Coordination becomes paramount in these systems. The choice of which technology, which standard, which platform to adopt becomes a strategic dance. Individuals must anticipate the choices of others. Will they choose the emerging trend, hoping to be part of the growing wave, or stick with the established, albeit potentially fading option? This is where the concept of tipping points enters the picture. A tipping point is that critical juncture, that delicate balance, where the accumulated momentum of adoption shifts irrevocably towards one option. Like a scale slowly tilting, weighed down by increasing pressure, it eventually snaps, favoring one side over the other. Think of the battle between VHS and Betamax, or the more recent competition between different social media platforms. Initially, the market might be fragmented, with multiple contenders vying for dominance. But as one platform gains a critical mass of users, the network effects kick in, attracting even more users, and creating a cascade that leaves its rivals struggling in its wake. This leads us to the concept of platform dominance. In network games, the tendency is towards the emergence of a single dominant platform, or, at most, a few large players. This isn't necessarily due to superior technology or inherent advantages, but rather due to the snowballing effect of network externalities. The platform with the largest user base becomes the most attractive to new users, creating a virtuous cycle of growth and solidifying its position. The implications of this dynamic are far-reaching. The classical economists' traditional models of perfect competition often fall short in capturing these nuances. The invisible hand, in this context, doesn't necessarily guide the market towards the most efficient outcome, but rather towards the outcome favored by the initial conditions and the subsequent network effects. A slightly better technology might be eclipsed by a competitor that simply manages to achieve critical mass first. The policymaker faces a difficult challenge in these environments: how to foster innovation and competition without stifling the growth of beneficial networks. Should they intervene to prevent the emergence of monopolies, or should they allow market forces to play out, even if it means accepting a degree of concentration? The answers are rarely straightforward. Intervening too early might stifle the development of a promising technology. Intervening too late might be ineffective, as the dominant platform has already established an unassailable position. Consider the history of operating systems. A few key players have consistently dominated the market, creating ecosystems of applications and services that further reinforce their dominance. This dominance allows them to exert considerable influence over the evolution of the technology and the direction of the industry. While this can lead to innovation and efficiency, it also raises concerns about potential abuses of power and the suppression of competing ideas. Ultimately, understanding network games is crucial for navigating the complexities of the modern economy. It forces us to move beyond the traditional models of supply and demand and to consider the strategic interactions and coordination problems that shape these dynamic markets. The challenge lies in fostering an environment that encourages innovation and competition while harnessing the benefits of network effects. But what happens when the network itself becomes a barrier to further innovation? As these platforms become increasingly powerful and entrenched, can they become a sort of economic gravity well, trapping us in their orbit and stifling the emergence of truly disruptive technologies? This is a question we'll need to consider as we move forward. Chapter 27. Lock-in Effects. How users become tied to platforms. Good evening. We've spent the last few weeks exploring the fascinating world of network effects, how value increases as more users join a system. Tonight, we delve into a related, and perhaps more insidious, phenomenon: lock-in effects. Imagine the gentle hum of a well-oiled machine, steadily drawing users into its orbit, making escape increasingly difficult. That, in essence, is lock-in. Lock-in effects arise from a confluence of factors, all conspiring to make switching costs prohibitively high. These costs aren't always monetary. They can be psychological, temporal, or even social. Think of the time invested in learning a particular software program, the files created in a specific format, or the friends connected within a specific social network. These investments create inertia, a resistance to change that benefits the platform at the user's expense. The most prominent driver of lock-in is switching costs. These are the expenses, broadly defined, a user incurs when moving from one platform to another. A classical economist might immediately focus on direct costs: the price of a new software license, the fees associated with transferring data. However, indirect costs are often far more substantial. Consider the time spent retraining oneself on a new operating system, the disruption to workflow caused by adopting a different messaging application, or the loss of established relationships within a specific online community. Another potent force contributing to lock-in is complementary assets. Platforms often encourage users to invest in assets that are only valuable within their ecosystem. This could be anything from custom-designed templates for a particular presentation software to digital books purchased exclusively for a specific e-reader. The more a user invests in these complementary assets, the less attractive it becomes to switch to a competing platform, as these assets would become effectively worthless. Data portability, or the lack thereof, plays a crucial role. A policymaker deeply concerned with consumer welfare will always advocate for greater data portability, allowing users to easily transfer their information between platforms. However, platforms often resist such measures, as it reduces their ability to retain users. The ability to seamlessly migrate your contacts, photos, and purchase history to a competitor significantly weakens the lock-in effect. Furthermore, vendor lock-in is a specific type of lock-in that arises when a user becomes dependent on a particular vendor's proprietary technology or service. This is especially prevalent in enterprise software and cloud computing. If a company builds its entire infrastructure around a specific vendor's platform, switching to a competitor can be an extremely complex and costly undertaking. The risk is that the vendor then gains considerable leverage, potentially raising prices or reducing service quality, knowing that the customer is effectively trapped. The implications of lock-in effects are far-reaching. They can lead to reduced competition as dominant platforms become entrenched and difficult to dislodge. This, in turn, can stifle innovation, as smaller players struggle to gain traction in the face of established giants. From a user perspective, lock-in can limit choice and reduce bargaining power, potentially leading to higher prices and lower quality of service. Strategies to mitigate lock-in effects are varied. Standardization, interoperability, and open-source alternatives all play a role in leveling the playing field. Consumers can also proactively reduce lock-in by diversifying their investments, using multiple platforms, and backing up their data in open formats. The key is to remain aware of the potential for lock-in and to take steps to avoid becoming overly reliant on any single platform. Think of a skilled tightrope walker, maintaining balance by carefully distributing their weight. So, as the digital landscape evolves, consider the forces that bind us to specific ecosystems. Are we truly free to choose, or are we subtly guided by the invisible hand of Lockit? And as we move further into the realm of artificial intelligence and decentralized technologies, how will the dynamics of platform dominance and user lock-in shift? That, perhaps, is a question for our next session. Until then, good night. Chapter 28: Switching Costs. The barriers to leaving a dominant platform. Yes. We've spoken of the alluring dance of networks, their inherent tendency to coalesce and concentrate. Think, for a moment, of water finding its level, drawn inexorably to the lowest point. A similar force is at play in markets governed by network effects. But the terrain isn't always smooth. There are obstacles, impediments to the free flow. Tonight, we consider these impediments: switching costs, the economic toll exacted upon those who dare to stray from the established order, from the dominant platform. Consider the humble telephone. Decades ago, switching carriers might have involved simply filling out a form. Today, imagine the cascade of adjustments required to abandon a deeply embedded smartphone ecosystem. Contacts migrate with effort. Apps must be repurchased. Familiar interfaces vanish, replaced by the unfamiliar. These are all switching costs, both tangible and intangible. They represent the friction that slows, and sometimes prevents, the outflow from a network. Now, the classical economist, always keen on elegant simplification, might frame switching costs purely in terms of monetary expense. The cost of a new device, the loss of unused credits, the cancellation fees. These are certainly factors, but they are only the surface ripples of a much deeper pool. Beneath the surface lies the realm of behavioral switching costs. Habit, learned behaviors, and the simple inertia of the familiar all contribute. We are creatures of habit, after all. To learn a new operating system, to retrain our fingers on a different keyboard layout, to adapt to a new set of protocols, this requires mental energy, a precious and often rationed resource. This cognitive burden acts as a powerful deterrent, especially when the perceived benefit of switching is marginal. Think of the subtle resistance you feel when faced with a new software update, even one promising improvements. That reluctance, that hesitation, is a tiny echo of the larger force of switching costs. Further still, consider network-based switching costs. These arise directly from the value inherent in the network itself. If your friends, family, and colleagues are all communicating on a particular platform, leaving that platform means sacrificing ease of communication, potentially missing out on vital information, and incurring the social cost of being out of the loop. This is a powerful disincentive, often outweighing even significant improvements offered by a competing platform. The value of the network isn't just the number of users, but the connections between them. Disrupting those connections carries a cost. Now, the policymaker, ever mindful of market power, rightly sees switching costs as a potential barrier to competition. High switching costs effectively entrench dominant platforms, making it exceedingly difficult for new entrants, or even established competitors, to gain traction. This can stifle innovation, reduce consumer choice, and ultimately lead to higher prices and lower quality. Imagine a walled garden, lush and beautiful, but with gates so heavy they discourage all but the most determined to leave. But switching costs are not inherently evil. They can also provide stability, encourage investment in the platform, and foster a sense of community among users. A certain degree of stickiness can be beneficial. The challenge, then, lies in finding the right balance. How do we lower switching costs enough to allow for healthy competition, without undermining the value and stability of the network itself? There are several avenues to explore. Standardization, for example, can reduce switching costs by ensuring that data and applications are portable across platforms. Interoperability, allowing different platforms to communicate seamlessly with each other, can mitigate the network-based costs of switching. And of course, government intervention in the form of regulation or antitrust action can be used to address situations where switching costs are demonstrably harming consumers and stifling innovation. But these solutions are not without their own complexities and trade-offs. Standardization can stifle innovation by locking in existing technologies. Interoperability can create security vulnerabilities. And government intervention, however well-intentioned, can have unintended consequences. The path forward is rarely clear. Ultimately, the challenge lies in understanding the specific nature of switching costs in a given market and tailoring policy responses accordingly. Are the costs primarily monetary, behavioral, or network-based? Are they justified by the value of the network, or are they simply a means of exploiting consumers? These are the questions we must grapple with as we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of the digital economy. So, as we settle into the quiet hum of understanding, consider this. Having identified the forces that bind users to dominant platforms, what forces might then catalyze a break, a shift in the established order? What conditions, what innovations might overcome these barriers and unleash a new wave of competition? We'll turn to this in the next chapter. Chapter 29, Platform Governance. Rules of the Road in Online Ecosystems. We've explored the basic architecture of platforms, the way they bring different groups together. Now, let's delve into the dynamic interplay that shapes their evolution, focusing on the concept of network games. It's a landscape where coordination reigns supreme, and small nudges can trigger monumental shifts, ultimately determining who dominates the digital realm. Think of it as a delicate ecosystem, striving for balance, where the rules of engagement are still being written. At the heart of these network games lies the simple, yet profound, concept of coordination. A platform's value isn't just the sum of its individual parts. Instead, it multiplies as more users, developers, or content creators join. A social network with only a handful of participants is, quite frankly, useless. Its true worth blossoms when a critical mass converges, creating a vibrant hub of interaction and exchange. This is the power of network effects, where each new participant enhances the experience for everyone else. The greater the network, the more value everyone gets. However, achieving this critical mass is rarely a smooth ascent. It often involves navigating a series of tipping points. Imagine a seesaw, precariously balanced. On one side, the platform struggles to gain traction, hampered by a lack of users or compelling content. On the other, lies the potential for explosive growth, driven by positive feedback loops. A single event, a clever marketing campaign, a viral piece of content, or even a competitor's misstep, can be enough to tip the scales, setting off a cascade of adoption. Once a platform crosses this threshold, momentum builds, making it increasingly difficult for rivals to catch up. Consider the early days of social media. Several platforms vied for attention, each offering slightly different features and philosophies. Yet, one managed to capture the zeitgeist, reaching a critical mass of users that solidified its position as the dominant player. It wasn't necessarily the best platform in any objective sense, but it became the go-to destination for online social interaction, simply because that's where everyone else was. The allure of the established network proved irresistible, leaving competitors struggling in its wake. This is the essence of a network game, not always about absolute superiority, but often about achieving critical mass and leveraging the inherent advantages of scale. The consequences of these tipping points are far-reaching. As one platform gains dominance, it can entrench itself, creating formidable barriers to entry for newcomers. This isn't necessarily a malicious act. It's simply the natural consequence of network effects. Users are less likely to switch to a new platform if it means leaving behind their established connections and favorite content. Similarly, developers are more inclined to focus their efforts on the platform with the largest audience, further reinforcing its dominance. The classical economist might see this as a natural outcome of market forces, while the policymaker might see this as something that could require monitoring to ensure fair competition and innovation. But what about innovation? Does platform dominance stifle creativity and choice? Not necessarily. While a dominant platform enjoys a significant advantage, it is not invulnerable. Complacency, a failure to adapt to changing user needs, or a disruptive innovation from a smaller competitor can all erode its position. History is littered with examples of once dominant platforms that have faded into obscurity, replaced by nimbler, more innovative rivals. Think of the early search engines, supplanted by the next wave of technology, or social networks that peaked in popularity before losing traction. The landscape is always shifting. Ultimately, understanding network games is crucial for navigating the complexities of platform governance. The rules of the road must foster both innovation and competition, while protecting user interests and ensuring a level playing field. This is a delicate balancing act, requiring careful consideration of the incentives at play and the potential consequences of different regulatory approaches. The challenge lies in creating a system that encourages platforms to compete on quality and innovation, rather than simply relying on the inertia of network effects to maintain their dominance. And as we look ahead, we might wonder, what new dynamics will shape the next phase of platform evolution? Will decentralization challenge the centralized power of today's giants? Will new technologies fundamentally alter the way networks are built and governed? These are the questions that will occupy us as we continue our journey into the evolving world of platform economics. Data as a competitive advantage, the new oil. We've explored the intricacies of market equilibrium, the delicate dance between supply and demand. Now let us turn our gaze towards a more contemporary landscape, one profoundly shaped by data and the digital networks that carry it. Here, we encounter a phenomenon often described as network games, where the value of a product or service increases as more people use it. This concept ties deeply into data's role as a competitive advantage, often touted as the new oil. Consider, for a moment, the essence of a network. A telephone alone is a useless object. Its value blossoms only when connected to other telephones, creating a network of communication. This is the fundamental principle behind network effects. The more participants, the greater the collective benefit, and, crucially, the greater the individual incentive to join. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle, a virtuous loop that can lead to dramatic growth. At the heart of network games lie three core concepts: coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. Coordination refers to the effort required for individuals to adopt a new technology or standard. Think of the early days of video formats, VHS and Betamax, both vying for market dominance. The superior technology, in this case arguably Betamax, did not prevail. Instead, VHS, with its wider availability and lower cost, achieved critical mass. This illustrates a key point: network effects often outweigh intrinsic product superiority. The sheer number of people using VHS made it more attractive, regardless of its technical merits. This brings us to the notion of tipping points. Imagine a scale, delicately balanced. On one side, the existing technology, the status quo. On the other, the new technology, slowly gathering momentum. As more and more users adopt the new technology, the scale begins to tilt. Eventually, a critical threshold is reached, the tipping point, where the momentum shifts decisively. The new technology becomes the dominant standard, and the old one fades into obsolescence. This is often a rapid and irreversible process, a cascade of adoption fueled by the network effect. Consider social media platforms. In their nascent stages, they are simply websites with limited appeal. But as more individuals join, the platform becomes a more valuable space for communication, connection, and information sharing. This draws in even more users, creating a snowball effect. The network effect creates a barrier to entry for new competitors, as users are hesitant to leave a platform where their friends, family, and colleagues already reside. This leads to the third element: platform dominance. Platform dominance occurs when a single platform establishes itself as the primary hub for a particular activity or service. This is often driven by data. The platform collects data on user behavior, preferences, and interactions. This data is then used to improve the platform's services, personalize user experiences, and target advertising more effectively. The cycle perpetuates as better services attract more users, leading to more data and even better services. The platform becomes increasingly entrenched, creating a significant competitive advantage. Data, in this context, is not simply information. It is a strategic asset. It is the fuel that powers the network effect, allowing platforms to refine their services, personalize experiences, and maintain their dominance. The classical economist might argue that this leads to market inefficiencies and potential monopolies. The policymaker wrestles with the challenge of regulating these powerful platforms, balancing the benefits of innovation with the need to protect consumer welfare and promote competition. The question, then, lingers in the air, much like the scent of old books in a library. As data becomes increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few powerful platforms, are we entering a new phase of economic organization, one where access to data determines not only competitive advantage, but also the very structure of the market? And if so, what are the implications for innovation, equality, and the future of our economy? Chapter 31. Algorithmic Bias. The dark side of machine learning, the symphony of algorithms, seemingly objective and precise, can, in fact, echo with the biases of its creators and the data that fuels it. This leads us to the unsettling intersection of machine learning and a key concept in economics: network games, particularly coordination, tipping points, and the emergence of platform dominance. Imagine a vast interconnected web, each node representing a user, a transaction, or a piece of information. Machine learning algorithms act as navigators within this web, identifying patterns and making predictions. But what happens when these algorithms, subtly influenced by hidden biases, steer the flow of value in inequitable directions? Let us consider the element of coordination. In network games, successful outcomes often hinge on widespread adoption of a particular standard or technology. Think of the VHS versus Betamax battle, or the more recent struggle for dominance between different electric vehicle charging standards. Algorithms, designed to optimize recommendations or search results, can inadvertently push users toward a particular choice, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. If an algorithm is trained on data that overrepresents a certain demographic, it might consistently favor that group's preferences, reinforcing existing inequalities in access to information, opportunities, or even financial services. The collective wisdom of the algorithm then becomes, in reality, the aggregated bias of its training data, leading to a coordinated, yet skewed, outcome. We all coordinate, but the algorithm has subtly nudged us into coordinating around a biased center. The concept of tipping points is equally pertinent. In many network games, a system remains in a stable state until a critical mass of users adopts a new technology or behavior. Once this threshold is crossed, the system rapidly transitions to a new equilibrium. Imagine an AI-powered hiring tool used by a company. If this tool, even with a slight bias against a particular gender or ethnic group, is used to screen a large number of candidates, it can systematically exclude individuals from that group, preventing them from reaching the interview stage. This might not be immediately apparent, but over time, the cumulative effect can lead to a significant underrepresentation of that group within the company. The initial bias, acting as a small perturbation, triggers a cascade effect, pushing the system past a tipping point and solidifying an inequitable outcome. The flow, once gently diverted, becomes a torrent favoring only certain channels. Finally, we arrive at the potent force of platform dominance. In the digital age, a few powerful platforms control vast amounts of data and wield significant influence over user behavior. These platforms often employ sophisticated machine learning algorithms to personalize user experiences, target advertising, and moderate content. However, if these algorithms are biased, they can perpetuate and amplify existing inequalities on a massive scale. Consider the case of personalized pricing. An algorithm might, based on data about a user's location, income, or browsing history, charge them a higher price for the same product or service. This is not necessarily malicious, but if the algorithm is trained on data that reflects historical biases in pricing, it will simply perpetuate those biases, creating a feedback loop that reinforces economic disparities. The platform, intended to be a level playing field, becomes a tilted stage, favoring some while disadvantaging others. The classical economist might argue that market forces will eventually correct these biases, that consumers will recognize the unfairness and switch to alternative platforms, or that businesses will realize the long-term costs of discriminatory practices. But this assumes a level playing field, perfect information, and rational actors. In reality, network effects and platform dominance can create significant barriers to entry, making it difficult for alternatives to emerge and challenge the status quo. The policymaker, therefore, faces a complex challenge: how to regulate algorithms and ensure fairness without stifling innovation. The answer lies in a multi-pronged approach, encompassing data transparency, algorithmic accountability, and ongoing monitoring to detect and mitigate bias. Chapter 32. Antitrust Regulation. Breaking up monopolies? Good evening. We've spent considerable time examining the standard models of market competition, noting how supply and demand interplay to establish equilibrium. Tonight, we shift our focus to a rather different beast: markets driven by network effects. And within these networks, we'll explore the thorny questions of coordination, tipping points, platform dominance, and ultimately, antitrust regulation. The core question, as always, is about balance, preventing undue market power while simultaneously allowing innovation to flourish. Imagine a quiet pond. A single pebble dropped in creates ripples, a localized effect. Now imagine a vast lake, its surface perfectly still. The same pebble, dropped in this larger body, might trigger a larger wave, one that interacts with existing currents, perhaps even setting off a chain reaction. This, in essence, is the difference between a standard market and a network market. The value of a product or service in a network market increases as more people use it. Think of telephones, social media platforms, or even something as seemingly simple as a particular type of computer software. The more people using the same software, the easier it becomes to collaborate and share information. This interconnectedness gives rise to what we call network effects, a powerful force that alters the competitive landscape. These effects often lead to a fascinating phenomenon: coordination problems. Consider two competing messaging apps. Both are functional. Both offer similar features. However, the value of each app is directly proportional to the number of your friends using it. Even if one app is objectively slightly better, the advantage of being on the same platform as your social circle can easily outweigh any minor technical superiority. Here enters the concept of tipping points. A tipping point is a critical threshold where the balance shifts dramatically. In our messaging app example, once one app gains a sufficient user base, it can reach a tipping point. The network effects become so strong that it becomes almost impossible for competing apps to gain traction. The dominance becomes self-reinforcing. Users flock to the platform where everyone else already is. This leads to a winner-takes-most, or even a winner-takes-all, scenario. Now, the classical economist might argue that this is simply market efficiency at work. The superior platform, through its inherent value and strategic choices, has rightfully risen to the top. However, the policymaker must consider the potential downsides of such dominance. A single dominant platform, even if initially beneficial, can stifle innovation, raise prices, and potentially abuse its market power. Imagine our dominant messaging apps suddenly introducing intrusive advertising or limiting interoperability with other platforms. Users are effectively locked in, with limited alternatives. This is where antitrust regulation enters the equation. The policymaker is tasked with the delicate balancing act of promoting competition and preventing monopolies. But how to do this effectively in the context of network effects? Simply breaking up a large platform into smaller entities might not be the answer. After all, the value of the network lies in its scale. Splintering the network could destroy the very benefits that made it valuable in the first place. More nuanced approaches might involve promoting interoperability, ensuring that different platforms can communicate with each other, thereby reducing the lock-in effect. Or, it might involve preventing platforms from leveraging their dominance in one market to gain an unfair advantage in another. For instance, a company with a dominant operating system shouldn't be allowed to unfairly favor its own web browser. The challenge lies in understanding the specific dynamics of each network market and tailoring the regulatory response accordingly. A one-size-fits-all approach is unlikely to be effective. The policymaker needs to act as a careful gardener, pruning overgrowth while nurturing new growth, ensuring a vibrant and competitive ecosystem. Ultimately, the goal is to foster innovation and consumer welfare. We want to allow successful platforms to flourish, but not to the point where they stifle competition and harm consumers. It's a constant calibration, a delicate balancing act. As we move forward, we will need to continuously refine our understanding of these complex dynamics. Our journey will continue. And so, as the moon rises, the tides turn, the question that remains: what new economic models will rise from the ashes of the old? Oh. Chapter 33. Interoperability. Opening up closed systems. SE Introduction. We've explored the power of individual actors, their rational choices shaping markets. But markets are rarely solitary islands. They exist within ecosystems, interconnected by flows of information, resources, and, crucially, networks. Last time, we spoke of competition within ecosystems. Now, let's consider the dynamics of these networks themselves, focusing on how open or closed they become, and the economic forces at play. Network games, coordination. Imagine a pristine field, ripe for development. It could become a town, a market square, or even a sprawling city. Which it becomes depends not just on individual decisions, but on coordinated expectations. This is the essence of a network game. The value of joining the network, be it a social media platform, a language, or even a particular technology standard, increases as more people join. The initial stages of this growth are often fragile, dependent on the right incentives and a degree of chance. Individuals face a classic coordination problem. Will enough others join to make it worthwhile? Tipping points. This coordination dilemma creates the potential for tipping points. Think of a gently flowing stream. Adding a few pebbles won't change its course. But add enough, and suddenly, the water finds a new path, carving a new channel. Similarly, in a network, a critical mass of users triggers a cascade effect. Suddenly, the advantages of joining outweigh the risks. The network enters a phase of rapid expansion, its trajectory seemingly predetermined. The tipping point is where initial uncertainty transforms into self-reinforcing dominance. This is not to say that external factors cease to matter, but the momentum shifts dramatically. The cost of being alone. Network effects. The attractiveness of joining a network increases with the number of others who have already joined. This concept is known as a network effect. Consider the telephone. A single telephone is useless. 2 telephones are barely more useful. But a vast network of telephones creates immense value, allowing widespread communication and connection. These effects are central to our understanding of interoperability. The more open the system, the greater the potential for network effects to benefit everyone. But closed systems, tightly controlled by a single entity, can also generate strong network effects, albeit with potentially unequal distribution of benefits. Platform dominance and lock-in. These dynamics naturally lead to the possibility of platform dominance. One network or platform achieves a significant lead, creating a barrier to entry for competitors. Users become locked into the dominant platform, even if superior alternatives emerge. This lock-in isn't necessarily malicious. It might simply reflect the cost of switching, the time it takes to learn a new system, the loss of existing connections, or the need to transfer data. However, this dominance can stifle innovation and lead to higher prices, as the dominant platform faces less competitive pressure. Interoperability as a counterbalance. Interoperability offers a powerful counterweight to the tendency towards platform dominance. It means the ability of different systems to work together, exchanging information and resources seamlessly. Imagine being able to send a message from one email provider to another, or being able to use any charger for any phone. Interoperability reduces the cost of switching, weakens lock-in, and encourages competition. It allows users to choose the best platform for their needs, without being trapped by network effects. Open and closed systems. The challenges. However, implementing interoperability isn't without its challenges. The owner of the dominant platform may resist, fearing a loss of control and revenue. Technical standards need to be agreed upon, requiring cooperation among competitors. And the design of interoperable systems must carefully balance the need for open access with the protection of privacy and security. The policymaker often plays a crucial role here, setting standards, enforcing regulations, and ensuring a level playing field. The classical economist's perspective. Standardization. The classical economist would argue that standardization is key to fostering interoperability. The sooner all actors agree on a single technical standard, the faster the network can evolve and the stronger it becomes. The difficulty lies in getting everyone to agree upon a single standard, but once it has been accomplished, the market can freely flourish. Conclusion. A question of balance. The tension between closed and open systems, between platform dominance and interoperability, is a recurring theme in the digital economy. It is a question of balance, weighing the benefits of centralized control against the advantages of decentralized innovation. As we move into an era of even more interconnectedness, of the Internet of Things and pervasive computing, how will this balance evolve? What new challenges will arise as we strive to create networks that are both powerful and inclusive? That is a question to ponder as we drift onward. 1. Decentralization. Blockchain and the future of networks. We've explored the foundational layers of blockchain technology, tracing its contours as a novel approach to economic organization. Now, let's turn our attention to the more nuanced aspects of network economics and how blockchain reshapes the very dynamics of coordination, tipping points, and the emergence of dominant platforms. Consider the fundamental concept of a network. Its value isn't intrinsic to the nodes themselves, but rather emerges from the connections between them. A telephone is useless without someone to call. A social media platform thrives only when a critical mass of users populate its digital spaces. This interconnectedness gives rise to what economists term network effects, where the value of a good or service increases as more people use it. And within these networks, network games are constantly being played. Coordination, in this context, becomes paramount. Imagine a group of artists, each proficient in a different medium: painting, sculpture, music, poetry. Individually, their talents are valuable, but collectively, they could create a symphony of artistic expression. The challenge, however, lies in coordinating their efforts, establishing common standards, and aligning their incentives. This is the essence of a coordination game. Traditional coordination relies on centralized authorities: institutions, corporations, governments. These entities act as orchestrators, setting the rules of the game and ensuring that everyone plays by them. They manage information, asymmetry, and enforce contracts. Blockchain, with its distributed ledger and smart contract capabilities, offers a fundamentally different approach to coordination. It replaces centralized control with decentralized consensus. Imagine that group of artists again. Instead of a single curator dictating the terms of collaboration, they use a blockchain-based platform. Smart contracts define the rules of engagement, automatically executing agreements based on predefined conditions. Transparency is built into the system, reducing information asymmetry and fostering trust. No single entity controls the flow of information or the distribution of rewards. The network itself becomes the orchestrator. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. In network games, tipping points represent critical thresholds where the adoption rate of a particular technology or platform suddenly accelerates. Think of the rapid adoption of smartphones or the rise of the internet itself. Below the tipping point, adoption is slow and incremental. Above it, the network effect kicks in, creating a positive feedback loop. More users attract more users, leading to exponential growth. The classical economist would likely analyze these tipping points through the lens of rational expectations and information cascades. Individuals, observing the choices of others, rationally infer the value of the network and adjust their own behavior accordingly. However, tipping points are not always predictable or beneficial. A poorly designed network, even with strong initial momentum, can fail to reach critical mass. Coordination failures, lack of interoperability, or negative network effects can all derail the process. Moreover, Once a network reaches its tipping point, it often leads to the emergence of a dominant platform. Think of the tech giants that control vast swaths of the internet. Their size and scale create formidable barriers to entry, stifling innovation and competition. This is where blockchain offers a potential counterweight. By decentralizing control and reducing reliance on intermediaries, it can create more open and competitive network ecosystems. Consider the potential of decentralized social media platforms. Instead of a single company controlling user data and content moderation policies, the network itself becomes the arbiter. Users have greater control over their data, and algorithms are transparent and accountable. Similarly, in the realm of finance, decentralized finance protocols offer an alternative to traditional banking systems, providing access to financial services without the need for intermediaries. The policymaker might consider the regulatory implications of such systems, how to foster innovation while protecting consumers and preventing illicit activities. However, the path towards decentralization is not without its challenges. Scalability, security, and governance remain significant hurdles. The transition from centralized to decentralized systems requires careful planning and execution. It also requires a fundamental shift in mindset, from a culture of control to a culture of collaboration. Blockchain presents a compelling vision for the future of networks, a future where power is distributed, innovation is fostered, and users are empowered. Yet, the success of this vision depends on our ability to overcome the technical, economic, and social challenges that lie ahead. Will blockchain truly disrupt the dominance of current platforms, or will it be absorbed and co-opted by existing power structures? This question lingers, awaiting the next chapter in the evolution of our digital economy. Chapter 35, Web3, a new vision for the internet. We've traversed the landscapes of money, markets, and meaning. Now, let us turn our gaze to a nascent domain, a digital frontier that promises to reshape the very architecture of the internet. Web 3.0. Before we delve into its intricacies, let us recall that earlier economic systems were also based on emergent structures. Think of the early Silk Road markets, spontaneous in their formation, and then consider how those informal ties gave way to more organized empires and trade association. Web 3, in its purest form, represents an attempt to decentralize the internet. It posits a future where users, rather than centralized corporations, control their data, content, and digital assets. But to truly understand Web 3, we must first explore the economic forces that govern its development. Network games, coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. These are the currents that shape its flow, the pressures that dictate its form. Imagine a small village square. No one benefits from being the only person there. As more villagers gather, a market begins to form, increasing the benefit to each participant. This is the essence of a network effect. The value of a network increases exponentially with each new user. However, this growth is not always smooth or predictable. It is often governed by the dynamics of coordination. Consider the adoption of a new standard, a particular type of electrical outlet perhaps. If everyone adopts the same standard, life becomes much easier. But if there are competing standards, each with its own ecosystem of products, the adoption becomes a game of coordination. Individuals must weigh the benefits of joining one network against the risks of being stranded on a less popular one. This is where tipping points become crucial. A tipping point is that critical mass where the momentum of adoption shifts dramatically. A technology, an idea, or even a rumor can linger in the periphery for years. Then suddenly, almost overnight, it becomes ubiquitous. Think of the adoption of smartphones. For years, they were expensive novelties. Then, suddenly, they were everywhere, transforming communication, commerce, and culture. Web 3 technologies are in many ways seeking their tipping points. The technology is there, the infrastructure is building, but widespread adoption hinges on overcoming coordination challenges. These coordination challenges are often amplified by the inherent tendency towards platform dominance. In the digital realm, winner-take-all dynamics are pervasive. The network effects that drive growth also create powerful incentives for consolidation. The platform with the most users, the most data, the most developers, tends to attract even more, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. The classical economist would point to the efficiency gains of scale, while the policymaker would be concerned about potential monopolies. We've seen this in Web 2, the current iteration of the Internet, where a handful of companies control vast swaths of online activity. Social media, search engines, e-commerce. These sectors are dominated by a few giants. Web 3 seeks to disrupt this pattern by distributing control and empowering users. The tools of the trade are blockchain technology, decentralized applications, and token-based incentives. Consider a decentralized social media platform. Instead of relying on a central server controlled by a single corporation, content and user data are distributed across a network of computers. Users own their data and have greater control over their online identities. Token-based incentives, such as cryptocurrencies, can reward users for creating content, curating communities, and participating in the network. This model aims to align the interests of the platform with the interests of its users, fostering a more equitable and participatory online environment. However, the path to decentralization is not without its challenges. Coordination remains a significant hurdle. Getting enough users, developers, and businesses to adopt new decentralized platforms requires overcoming inertia and entrenched network effects. Furthermore, the regulatory landscape for Web3 is still evolving. Governments are grappling with how to regulate cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance, and other emerging technologies. The policymaker now has a new puzzle to solve. Ultimately, the success of Web3 will depend on its ability to create compelling use cases that offer tangible benefits to users. It must be more than just a technological novelty. It must provide real value, whether it's greater control over data, more equitable access to financial services, or new forms of creative expression. So, as we rest on the shores of what might be a new internet era, one cannot help but wonder, what happens when the initial Web3 proponents lose interest? Is there a Web 4 just around the corner, quietly bubbling beneath the surface, waiting to disrupt the disruptors themselves? It's a question best contemplated in the quiet stillness of the night. Let us leave it to simmer in the background as you drift off to sleep. DAOs, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, good evening. Tonight, our thoughts will meander through the intriguing landscape of decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. Think of them as digital cooperatives, orchestrated not by a central authority, but by the intricate dance of code and community. To truly understand their potential and their pitfalls, we must examine them through the lens of network games, coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. Consider, first, the essence of a network. Its value isn't merely the sum of its individual parts, but the square of the number of connections between them. Each new member amplifies the worth for everyone involved. This is Metcalfe's law echoing in the digital age. DAOs leverage this inherent network effect. Their effectiveness hinges on achieving a critical mass, a tipping point where participation snowballs and the organization becomes self-sustaining. Coordination, however, is the linchpin. How do disparate individuals, scattered across the globe, align their actions towards a common goal? In traditional hierarchies, authority provides the necessary glue. But DAOs, by design, reject centralized command. They rely on transparent governance models encoded into smart contracts, lines of digital instruction etched immutably onto the blockchain. Proposals are submitted, votes are cast, and the outcome, whether funding a new project or amending the organization's rules, is automatically executed. Imagine a flowing river. The smart contract serves as its banks, channeling the energy of the community. Yet, even the most meticulously designed channel can be subject to unforeseen currents, to the erosion of trust, or the silting up of apathy. The challenge lies in designing governance mechanisms that are both robust and responsive, capable of adapting to the ever-shifting landscape of the digital world. Now, let us consider tipping points. A DAO, like any network, can languish in obscurity, a seed struggling to sprout in barren soil. But with the right combination of incentives, a spark of community, and a compelling purpose, it can suddenly burst forth, reaching that crucial threshold where participation becomes its own reward. Early adopters are vital, the initial wave that crests and pulls others along. Their commitment, their evangelism, helps to establish the legitimacy and the momentum necessary for sustained growth. However, the pursuit of dominance is a double-edged sword. While network effects can create powerful virtuous cycles, they can also lead to winner-take-all scenarios. Just as a single social media platform can come to dominate the digital landscape, a DAO with a significant first-mover advantage could potentially stifle innovation and lock out competing initiatives. This is where the decentralized ethos of DAOs becomes critically important. The code is typically open source, allowing others to fork and replicate the organization, creating a competitive ecosystem. Consider the potential for platform dominance in decentralized finance. A DAO that successfully establishes a robust infrastructure for lending and borrowing could amass significant power, potentially influencing interest rates and capital allocation across the entire ecosystem. The policymaker must be vigilant, ensuring that no single DAO becomes too powerful, that the principles of decentralization remain paramount. The classical economist might argue that such concerns are unwarranted, that the market will self-correct. If a dominant DAO becomes too exploitative, competitors will emerge, offering more favorable terms. But history suggests that path dependencies can be powerful, that once a certain level of dominance is achieved, it can be difficult to dislodge, even in the face of superior alternatives. The beauty of DAOs lies in their potential to democratize decision-making, to empower individuals to collectively shape the future of the digital world. But their success hinges on our ability to navigate the complexities of network games, to design governance models that are both efficient and equitable, and to ensure that the pursuit of dominance does not undermine the fundamental principles of decentralization. As we conclude this evening, let us ponder a lingering question. How can we ensure that the decentralized promise of DAOs doesn't simply recreate the concentrated power structures of the past, dressed in the garb of technological innovation? What new economic models will arise to challenge or complement the DAO structure in the future? These are the questions that will guide our exploration in the days to come. Chapter 37. The Metaverse. Immersive virtual worlds and networked experiences. Tonight, we delve into the alluring, often bewildering, world of the metaverse, specifically examining network games and their peculiar economic characteristics. Within these immersive virtual realms, the principles of coordination, the drama of tipping points, and the enduring quest for platform dominance play out on a grand, sometimes fantastical, scale. Imagine, if you will, a complex ecosystem, sustained not by sunlight and rain, but by data and code, fueled by human interaction. Network games, at their core, are a manifestation of network effects. The value a player derives from the game is directly proportional to the number of other players participating. A solitary game of chess can be fulfilling, certainly, but a massively multiplayer online role-playing game thrives on the interconnectedness of its participants. The more individuals inhabit the virtual world, the richer the social fabric, the more vibrant the economy, and the more compelling the overall experience. This positive feedback loop is the engine that drives growth. However, this growth is not always smooth or predictable. The concept of coordination becomes paramount. For a metaverse to flourish, users must coalesce around a shared platform, a common set of rules, and a perceived sense of community. Achieving this coordination is no small feat. Consider the multitude of virtual worlds vying for attention, each offering a slightly different flavor of experience. Why does one succeed while another languishes? The answer often lies in the ability to foster a critical mass of users. This leads us to the concept of tipping points. Imagine a delicate balance, a virtual equilibrium. A subtle shift in perceived value, perhaps a new feature, a compelling narrative, or a strategic marketing campaign, can nudge the system towards a new state. As more users join, the perceived value increases for everyone, creating a snowball effect. This is the tipping point. the moment when a virtual world transitions from a niche interest to a mainstream phenomenon. Conversely, negative feedback loops, such as poorly moderated communities or pay-to-win mechanics, can trigger a downward spiral, leading to the abandonment of a platform. The economic implications of these dynamics are profound. Platform dominance becomes the ultimate prize. The metaverse platform that achieves critical mass and successfully navigates these tipping points gains a significant competitive advantage. It becomes the de facto standard, attracting developers, content creators, and of course, users. This dominance is not merely about entertainment. It's about control over the flow of virtual assets, the shaping of social interactions, and the capture of economic value. The platform owner becomes, in essence, a digital landlord, shaping the rules of the game and extracting rents from the ecosystem. Consider the parallels to the real world. The classical economists might argue that the pursuit of platform dominance is simply a manifestation of rational self-interest, driving innovation and efficiency. The policymaker, however, might raise concerns about potential monopolies and the need for regulation to ensure fair competition and prevent the exploitation of users. The balance is delicate. Within these virtual worlds, novel economic models emerge. The scarcity of digital assets, even those that are purely cosmetic, can drive significant value. Non-fungible tokens allow for the unique ownership of virtual items, creating new markets and investment opportunities. The convergence of gaming, social interaction, and financial speculation blurs the lines between entertainment and economic activity. Furthermore, the metaverse presents new challenges for traditional economic thinking. How do we measure economic activity within these virtual worlds? How do we tax virtual transactions? How do we protect users from fraud and manipulation? These are complex questions that require careful consideration and innovative solutions. Chapter 38. The Creator Economy. Empowering independent content creators. Last time, we explored the burgeoning landscape of digital marketplaces. Now, let's gently turn our attention to a closely related and increasingly significant phenomenon, the creator economy. This vibrant ecosystem, populated by independent content creators, influencers, and digital artisans, operates under the intriguing influence of network games, a concept rich with coordination, tipping points, and the perennial question of platform dominance. Network games at their heart are about interconnectedness. The value of a network, be it a social media platform or a file-sharing service, isn't simply the sum of its parts. It grows exponentially as more individuals participate. This is the essence of Metcalfe's law, a cornerstone of network economics. Think of the early days of the telephone. A single telephone is, essentially, useless. Two telephones offer limited utility. But as the network expands, each additional user adds not just one unit of value, but the potential for connection to all existing users, generating a network effect. The creator economy thrives on these network effects. A content creator, be they a musician, writer, or video producer, benefits enormously from the size and engagement of their audience. The larger the network, the greater the potential for discovery, collaboration, and, crucially, monetization. This dynamic introduces the element of coordination. Creators must strategically align their content and marketing efforts to attract and retain viewers, readers, or listeners, effectively coordinating their actions with the implicit preferences of the network. This coordination, however, is often subject to tipping points. A tipping point represents a threshold beyond which a relatively small change can trigger a dramatic and irreversible shift in the system. In the creator economy, this might manifest as a sudden surge in popularity for a particular creator, driven by a viral video or a strategic collaboration. Or conversely, a creator might experience a significant decline in engagement due to a misstep in content strategy or a change in the platform's algorithm. Understanding these tipping points is crucial for both creators and the platforms that host them. Which brings us to the perennial question of platform dominance. In the creator economy, a few powerful platforms often control access to vast audiences and dictate the terms of engagement. This creates a situation where creators are simultaneously empowered by the reach of these platforms and potentially vulnerable to their policies. The classical economist might argue that competition will naturally drive platforms to offer the most favorable terms to creators, but in reality, network effects can create significant barriers to entry, allowing dominant platforms to exert considerable influence. The policymaker grapples with the challenge of fostering a competitive landscape while avoiding stifling innovation. Regulations aimed at promoting fairness and transparency must be carefully calibrated to avoid unintended consequences that could harm the very creators they are intended to protect. The debate over platform regulation is complex and multifaceted, touching upon issues of antitrust law, data privacy, and freedom of expression. The creator economy, therefore, represents a fascinating case study in network games. It highlights the power of interconnectedness, the importance of strategic coordination, the precariousness of tipping points, and the ongoing struggle for platform dominance. As we observe this dynamic landscape evolving, we might ask ourselves, what new economic models will emerge from this era of independent creation? And how will technology continue to reshape the relationship between creators, platforms, and audiences? Chapter 39. The Attention Economy. Competing for user focus, we've previously considered the nature of information goods, their peculiar economics, and their susceptibility to abundance. Now, let us turn our attention to a perhaps even scarcer commodity in the digital age: attention itself. In a world awash with information, the ability to capture and maintain user focus becomes a crucial battleground. This battleground is governed, in large part, by the dynamics of network effects, often manifesting as complex network games where coordination, tipping points, and the eventual dominance of platforms play pivotal roles. Imagine a group of people, each independently deciding which language to learn. The intrinsic value of each language, its inherent beauty, its literary canon, is overshadowed by its network effect. The more people who speak a language, the more useful it becomes for everyone else. This creates a powerful incentive to coordinate around a single language, even if, in some abstract sense, another language might be better. This is the essence of a coordination game. The challenge lies in achieving that coordination. Early adopters bear the risk. They must invest before knowing if the network will reach a critical mass. The key is often a tipping point, a threshold beyond which adoption accelerates rapidly, leading to near universal prevalence. Below that threshold, inertia reigns, and competing options may linger, each vying for dominance. This tipping point is not always predictable. It can be influenced by subtle factors, by perception as much as reality. Consider now the realm of operating systems. Early on, multiple competitors existed. Yet, as application developers gravitated toward one platform, the value of that platform to users increased, attracting even more users, and in turn, more developers. This positive feedback loop is a classic illustration of network effects, leading to platform dominance. The early lead, even if slight, can snowball into an insurmountable advantage. The classical economist might point to the resulting efficiencies, standardization, reduced transaction costs, a larger pool of skilled users. The policymaker, however, might raise concerns about the potential for monopoly power, stifled innovation, and reduced consumer choice. The balance is delicate, a constant tension between the benefits of coordination and the risks of unchecked dominance. The intricacies of these network games are further amplified in the attention economy. Social media platforms, for instance, compete fiercely for user eyeballs. The value of a social network lies primarily in the size and engagement of its user base. A user gains little benefit from a platform if their friends and family are not present, or if the content is stale and unengaging. Therefore, platforms invest heavily in features designed to attract and retain users, even if those features are not inherently beneficial to individual well-being. Consider the endless scroll, the personalized recommendations, the carefully curated notifications, all designed to maximize time on platform. This relentless pursuit of attention can lead to unintended consequences. The algorithms that optimize for engagement are often agnostic to the quality of the content. Sensationalism, outrage, and misinformation can spread rapidly, crowding out more nuanced and thoughtful discourse. The very architecture of these platforms can subtly shape our perceptions, our beliefs, and our social interactions. The policymaker grapples with the challenge of regulating these platforms without stifling innovation or infringing on freedom of expression. The balance, again, is precarious. Platform dominance, once achieved, is difficult to dislodge. The cost of switching to a competing platform can be high, both in terms of time and effort, and in terms of losing access to one's existing network. This lock-in effect creates a significant barrier to entry for new entrants, further reinforcing the incumbent's position. However, even seemingly unassailable giants can be vulnerable to disruption. Technological shifts, changes in user preferences, or simply a failure to adapt can erode their dominance over time. The history of the internet is littered with the corpses of once mighty platforms that failed to anticipate the next wave. The implications for businesses, individuals, and society as a whole are profound. Understanding the dynamics of network games, the importance of tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance is essential for navigating the complexities of the attention economy. The strategies for success are not merely about creating a better product. They are about building and nurturing a vibrant network, fostering a sense of community, and capturing that elusive commodity, user attention. But as we move towards even more immersive and integrated digital experiences, one wonders, what new forms of value exchange will emerge, and how will they reshape the attention economy as we know it? Chapter 40: Misinformation and Disinformation. The spread of fake news. Ah, yes. We've touched upon the delicate dance of information asymmetry previously, how uneven knowledge can ripple through markets and create imbalances. Now, let's consider a particularly potent and, frankly, disruptive form of this asymmetry: the deliberate creation and spread of misinformation and disinformation. Think of it as a shadow cast upon the landscape of economic decision-making, distorting perceptions and influencing choices in ways often unseen. And to understand this shadow, we must turn to the familiar terrain of network games, those complex arenas where individual choices are inextricably linked to the choices of others. Coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance become not just abstract economic concepts, but the very mechanisms by which falsehoods gain traction and influence. Imagine a simple scenario. A new technological standard emerges. Two competing formats vie for dominance. Early adopters carefully weigh the advantages of each. But eventually, a critical mass is reached for one format. This tipping point triggers a cascade effect. More and more individuals adopt the dominant standard, not necessarily because it's inherently superior, but because the network effect makes it increasingly advantageous to align with the majority. This, in essence, is a coordination game. We all benefit when we agree on the same standard. Now, replace the technological standard with a piece of news. Initially, only a small group believes it. But if the narrative is emotionally resonant, if it taps into existing anxieties or biases, it can spread rapidly. Each share, each retweet, each comment acts as a tiny endorsement, nudging others towards acceptance. A tipping point is reached. The news, regardless of its veracity, becomes widely accepted as truth simply because so many others seem to believe it. This is the power of social influence, amplified by the architecture of online networks. The structure of these networks is also crucial. Consider the rise of powerful online platforms. These platforms, initially designed to facilitate communication and connection, have become fertile ground for the propagation of misinformation. Their algorithms, often optimized for engagement, can inadvertently amplify sensationalist or emotionally charged content, regardless of its factual basis. The classical economist, in his more cynical moments, might argue this is simply supply and demand at work. People crave novelty, drama, and confirmation bias. Platforms provide it. But the consequences extend far beyond mere entertainment. The policymaker now faces a daunting challenge. Misinformation can distort public opinion on critical issues, from healthcare to climate change. It can undermine trust in institutions, destabilize markets, and even incite violence. How do we navigate this treacherous landscape? How do we safeguard the integrity of information without infringing on fundamental freedom? One approach is to focus on building resilience. Just as a healthy immune system can ward off disease, a society equipped with critical thinking skills and media literacy can better resist the allure of falsehoods. This requires investment in education, promotion of responsible journalism, and fostering a culture of skepticism. Another approach involves tackling the economic incentives that drive the creation and spread of misinformation. Ad revenue, for instance, often rewards clickbait headlines and sensationalist stories, regardless of their accuracy. Can we design alternative models that prioritize truth and accuracy over engagement? Can we create disincentives for the deliberate dissemination of false information? These are not easy questions. The interplay between technology, psychology, and economics is complex and ever-evolving. But understanding the dynamics of network games, the coordination challenges, the tipping points, the role of platform dominance, is essential if we hope to mitigate the risks posed by misinformation and disinformation. We must strive to create a digital ecosystem that promotes informed decision-making, rather than one that preys on fear, ignorance, and prejudice. As we conclude, consider this. What new economic models might emerge to challenge the current platform dominance and foster a more equitable and truthful information landscape? What entirely novel approaches might shift the incentives away from the sensational and toward the substantial? This, perhaps, would be the subject of our next contemplation. Sleep well. Chapter 41. The Future of Social Media. New platforms and new challenges. Last time, we explored the evolution of attention economies, how these shimmering pools of human interest coagulate around specific points. Now, let us consider where these digital currents might be flowing next. The future of social media is intimately bound to the economic forces governing network games. Coordination problems, the possibility of tipping points, and the enduring quest for platform dominance. Think of it as a delicate dance between innovation and inertia. The essence of a network game lies in the inherent value derived from connecting with others. The more individuals adopt a particular platform, the more valuable it becomes to each user. This creates a powerful positive feedback loop, a snowball effect that can lead to rapid adoption and the emergence of dominant players. Imagine a nascent social platform designed for sharing esoteric poetry. It might offer brilliant algorithms and a flawless user interface. However, without a critical mass of poets and readers, its value remains limited. It is the very act of coordination, the collective decision of users to converge on a single platform, that unlocks its true potential. However, this coordination is not always a smooth, linear process. There are often tipping points, critical thresholds where the perceived value of joining a network suddenly surpasses the inertia of staying with an existing one. Consider a long-established platform struggling with user privacy. As concerns mount, users may begin to contemplate alternatives. But unless a critical mass makes the leap, the new platform struggles to gain traction. However, once that tipping point is reached, the exodus can be swift and dramatic. The old regime crumbles under the weight of its own shortcomings, while the new one blossoms, fueled by the collective energy of its new inhabitants. This brings us to the question of platform dominance. In the digital landscape, it is rare to find perfect competition. The strong network effects inherent in social media often lead to a winner-takes-most scenario. The platform with the largest user base attracts the most content creators, the most advertisers, and consequently, the most users. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle that can be difficult to break. The classical economist might argue that this concentration of power inevitably leads to complacency and reduced innovation. But this is not necessarily the case. Dominant platforms are constantly under pressure to adapt and evolve, lest they become vulnerable to disruptive technologies or shifting user preferences. New platforms emerge constantly, each vying for a piece of the social media pie. Some focus on niche communities, catering to specific interests or demographics. Others leverage emerging technologies, such as augmented reality or blockchain, to offer novel user experiences. The policymaker faces a complex challenge: how to foster innovation and competition without stifling the growth of promising new entrants. Too much regulation can stifle innovation, while too little can allow dominant platforms to stifle competition. The key lies in finding a delicate balance, a framework that promotes fairness, transparency, and user choice. Furthermore, the future of social media is inextricably linked to the evolving landscape of artificial intelligence. AI algorithms already play a crucial role in content moderation, personalized recommendations, and targeted advertising. As AI becomes more sophisticated, it will likely play an even greater role in shaping our online experiences. The ethical implications of this are profound, raising questions about algorithmic bias, data privacy, and the potential for manipulation. Think of the AI as a skilled gardener, tending to the flow of information within the network. But who controls the gardener? And what are their intentions? So, as we drift towards slumber, let us ponder this. Will the next generation of social media platforms be defined by centralized dominance or decentralized autonomy? Will the network effects of today solidify into unbreakable monopolies, or will new architectures and governance models create a more equitable and diverse digital landscape? And what role will technologies like decentralized finance play in shaping these new digital economies? These are the questions that will shape the future of our online interactions. Sleep well. Chapter 42. AI and Network Games. The Next Frontier. Welcome, seekers of understanding. We've traversed the landscapes of individual choice and market interaction. Now, let us turn our gaze towards a realm where interaction is the choice, where value arises not from inherent properties, but from the very tapestry of connections we weave, network games. And within this tapestry, we find threads of artificial intelligence, poised to redraw the map of economic power. Think, if you will, of a simple telephone. Alone, it is but a piece of inert plastic and metal. Its utility blossoms only when connected to another phone, allowing communication. Add more connections, more users, and the value of each individual phone exponentially increases. This, in essence, is the core of network effects. The more people participate, the more valuable the network becomes for everyone involved. This is our narrative landmark, connecting our journey to where we are now. Within these networks, three key concepts dance: coordination, tipping points, and platform dominance. Coordination. First. For a network to thrive, its participants must agree, implicitly or explicitly, on a set of standards, protocols, or even just shared expectations. Consider early attempts at video formats. Beta and VHS fought for dominance, and the ultimate victor wasn't necessarily the technically superior format. It was the format that achieved critical mass, the format that most people adopted, regardless of its intrinsic qualities. This highlights the self-fulfilling prophecy inherent in network effects. If people believe a network will succeed, they are more likely to join it, thereby contributing to its success. This brings us to the concept of tipping points. Imagine a scale, delicately balanced. On one side, a promising new network struggles for recognition. On the other, an established network enjoys widespread adoption. At first, the established network holds the advantage, but as more individuals join the new network, a critical threshold is reached, a tipping point. Suddenly, the new network offers superior value, attracting a cascade of new users and swiftly eclipsing the old. The classical economist might model this with differential equations, charting the flow of users from one network to another, seeking equilibrium. But such models often struggle to capture the inherent uncertainty and behavioral quirks that shape these transitions. And what of those networks that successfully navigate these treacherous waters, conquering the competition and establishing themselves as dominant platforms? Consider the social media landscape. By the end, a single platform often emerges as the central hub, attracting the majority of users and dictating the rules of engagement. This dominance can create significant economic power, allowing the platform to influence consumer behavior, control access to information, and extract substantial rents. The policymaker, grappling with concerns about antitrust and market concentration, might explore interventions designed to promote competition and prevent abuse of this power. But the line between fostering innovation and stifling growth is often blurred, requiring careful and nuanced judgment. Now, let us introduce the element of artificial intelligence. AI, with its ability to analyze vast datasets, personalize user experiences, and automate complex tasks, is poised to amplify network effects to unprecedented levels. Imagine an AI-powered social network that learns your preferences, anticipates your needs, and seamlessly connects you with relevant individuals and opportunities. The value of such a network would far exceed that of its less intelligent predecessors, creating even stronger incentives for users to join and even greater barriers for competitors to overcome. Furthermore, AI can be used to strategically manipulate network dynamics. Algorithms can be designed to artificially inflate user numbers, create echo chambers, or subtly influence user opinion. The ethical implications of such manipulation are profound, raising fundamental questions about the nature of trust, autonomy, and the very fabric of our social interactions. The interplay between AI and network games presents both immense opportunities and daunting challenges. As AI continues to evolve, it will reshape the landscape of economic power, creating new winners and losers, and forcing us to reconsider the traditional models of competition and regulation. The dominant platforms of tomorrow may not be those with the largest user base, but those with the most sophisticated AI, capable of harnessing the power of network effects in novel and unforeseen ways. But what happens when multiple AIs, each representing competing networks, begin to interact? Will we see a new form of economic warfare, fought not with dollars and cents, but with algorithms and data? This question lingers, inviting us to contemplate the next chapter in this ever-evolving saga. Chapter 43. Ethical Considerations. Privacy, security, and responsibility. We've journeyed through the fascinating landscape of network effects, observing how the value of a good or service blossoms with each new user. Now, let us turn our attention to the moral compass that must guide our exploration of these network games, specifically concerning coordination, tipping points, and the potential for platform dominance. The very interconnectedness that fuels network effects also raises profound questions about privacy, security, and our collective responsibility in shaping these digital ecosystems. Consider the realm of privacy. In a network game, participation often necessitates the sharing of data. The more we connect, the more information we reveal about ourselves, our preferences, our behaviors, our very identities. This data becomes a valuable commodity, fueling personalized experiences and targeted advertising. However, the potential for misuse is palpable. Imagine a platform amassing such a comprehensive profile of its users that it can predict their actions with alarming accuracy, manipulating choices, or even influencing elections. The line between personalized service and manipulative control blurs, and we must ask ourselves, what safeguards are necessary to protect individual autonomy in the face of such informational asymmetry? This brings us to the critical issue of security. Network effects amplify both benefits and risks. A single vulnerability in a widely used platform can expose millions of users to potential harm. Data breaches, cyberattacks, and the spread of misinformation are all amplified by the inherent interconnectedness of these networks. The sheer scale of these systems makes them attractive targets, and the speed at which information, both accurate and inaccurate, propagates can overwhelm traditional security measures. The responsibility for maintaining a secure network lies not only with the platform providers, but also with individual users, who must exercise caution and adopt responsible online practices. But how do we balance the demands of security with the principles of openness and innovation that drive the very growth of these networks? Further, platform dominance presents a unique set of ethical challenges. As we've seen, network effects can lead to a winner-takes-all scenario, where a single platform captures the vast majority of the market. This dominance can stifle innovation, limit consumer choice, and even exert undue influence on political discourse. The classical economist might argue that market forces will eventually correct any imbalances, but the reality is often more complex. Incumbent platforms possess significant advantages, including vast datasets, established user bases, and the ability to acquire or crush emerging competitors. The policymaker grapples with the dilemma of how to regulate these dominant platforms without stifling the very innovation they represent. Antitrust laws can play a role, but they are often slow and cumbersome, struggling to keep pace with the rapid evolution of technology. The ethical considerations extend beyond the immediate stakeholders, the platform providers, the users, and the regulators. They encompass the broader societal impact of these network games. Consider the issue of algorithmic bias. Algorithms, trained on historical data, can perpetuate and even amplify existing societal biases, leading to discriminatory outcomes in areas such as hiring, lending, and criminal justice. The creators of these algorithms bear a heavy responsibility to ensure fairness and transparency, but the challenge is formidable. How do we identify and mitigate biases that are embedded in complex algorithms? How do we ensure that these technologies serve to promote equality and opportunity, rather than reinforcing existing inequalities? The answer, perhaps, lies in fostering a culture of ethical awareness and responsibility throughout the entire ecosystem. This requires collaboration between technologists, policymakers, ethicists, and the public. It necessitates the development of clear ethical guidelines and standards for the design and deployment of network technologies. It demands that we prioritize privacy and security by design, building these principles into the very foundation of our networks. It calls for ongoing dialogue and debate about the ethical implications of these technologies, ensuring that they serve the common good, not merely the interests of a few dominant players. Ultimately, the success of network games hinges not only on their economic viability, but also on their ethical integrity. We must strive to create networks that are not only efficient and innovative, but also fair, transparent, and respectful of individual rights. The journey into the digital future requires a deep and abiding commitment to ethical principles. The next stage considers the environmental economics and the impact of such large networks on the natural world. What new problems will arise? The geopolitics of network games, digital sovereignty, the inherent nature of network games, those fascinating arenas of coordination, tipping points, and the alluring promise of platform dominance extends far beyond mere corporate strategy. These economic forces now ripple across the very fabric of international relations, shaping what we might call the geopolitics of networks. At the heart of this complex interplay lies a concept gaining increasing prominence: digital sovereignty. Consider, if you will, the classical understanding of sovereignty. A nation-state, bounded by defined geographical limits, holds supreme authority within its borders. It dictates laws, controls resources, and regulates movement. But in the digital realm, these clear demarcations become blurred, almost ethereal. Data flows freely, transcending national boundaries with astonishing ease. Platforms, often headquartered in one jurisdiction, exert influence across the globe, their algorithms shaping perceptions and directing behavior irrespective of national allegiance. This tension between the traditional notion of territorial sovereignty and the borderless reality of digital networks gives rise to the imperative for digital sovereignty. It's an assertion by nation-states of their right to govern the digital space within their jurisdiction, to protect their citizens' data, to foster local innovation, and to safeguard their cultural heritage from being subsumed by the homogenizing forces of global platform. It's an attempt to regain a sense of control in a world increasingly defined by intangible assets and virtual flows. The quest for digital sovereignty often manifests in various forms. We see it in data localization policies, requiring that data generated within a country be stored within that country's borders. This, the policymaker argues, allows for greater oversight and control, shielding sensitive information from foreign interference and ensuring compliance with local laws. We see it in the development of national digital infrastructure, fostering domestic alternatives to dominant foreign platforms and reducing reliance on external providers. We see it in the regulation of online content, aimed at combating misinformation, hate speech, and other harmful content that can undermine social cohesion. However, the pursuit of digital sovereignty is not without its challenges. The very essence of network effects, which drive platform dominance, suggests that fragmentation can be detrimental. Imposing barriers to data flows can stifle innovation, reduce efficiency, and ultimately harm consumers. Moreover, the enforcement of digital sovereignty can be technically complex and politically sensitive, requiring international cooperation and a delicate balancing act between national interests and global norms. The classical economist, ever wary of unintended consequences, reminds us that protectionist measures, even those cloaked in the language of digital sovereignty, can ultimately backfire. They can create inefficiencies, hinder competition, and ultimately leave consumers worse off. The ideal perhaps lies in a middle ground, a framework that allows for both the free flow of data and the protection of legitimate national interests. Furthermore, the concept of digital sovereignty raises profound questions about the nature of power in the 21st century. Does it necessitate the creation of national champions, favored by the state and shielded from foreign competition? Or should the focus be on fostering a level playing field, promoting innovation, and empowering consumers to make informed choices? The answers to these questions will shape the future of the digital economy and the very fabric of international relations. And what of the global south? How do nations with less developed digital infrastructure navigate this new geopolitical landscape? Are they destined to become mere consumers of technology developed elsewhere? Or can they forge their own paths towards digital sovereignty, leveraging their unique strengths and embracing the opportunities presented by the digital revolution? This remains an open question, a chapter yet to be fully written in the ongoing saga of network games and global power. What new models of digital cooperation might emerge from these nascent economies, challenging the dominance of the established players? Conclusion: the enduring power of networks and the future of coordination, as we've traversed the intricate pathways of network games, exploring the delicate dance between coordination, tipping points, and the ascent of platform dominance, it feels fitting to draw our journey to a contemplative close. We've witnessed how individual choices, seemingly insignificant in isolation, can collectively shape the landscape of an entire economy, and indeed, the very fabric of our social interactions. Our exploration began with the fundamental understanding that value within a network isn't inherent in the individual node, but rather emerges from the connections that bind it to others. Think of it as a single neuron in a vast neural network. Its power lies not in its singular function, but in its ability to communicate and collaborate with countless others. This foundational principle underpins the entire edifice of network economics. We then examined the fascinating phenomenon of coordination. In many network games, success hinges on aligning our actions with those of others. The choice between VHS and Betamax, the adoption of a standard computer operating system, the selection of a social media platform. All these decisions reflect our inherent desire to connect, to share, and to benefit from the collective. Achieving this coordination, however, is rarely a simple task. The inertia of existing networks, the allure of competing technologies, and the inherent uncertainty of predicting future trends all contribute to the challenge. And then, we arrived at the concept of tipping points, those critical junctures where a gradual shift in sentiment suddenly cascades into widespread adoption. Imagine a river, flowing smoothly for years until a single strategically placed dam triggers a flood, reshaping the entire landscape. These tipping points are notoriously difficult to predict, often arising from a complex interplay of factors, including perceived value, network effects, and sheer luck. The sudden dominance of a particular technology or platform can often be traced back to one of these pivotal moments, where a critical mass of users flock to embrace it, leaving competitors struggling in its wake. Platform dominance, the inevitable consequence of successful network effects, emerged as a recurring theme. As a platform grows, it attracts more users, which in turn increases its value to existing users, creating a virtuous cycle. The early mover advantage, strategic acquisitions, and clever pricing strategies can all contribute to the establishment of a dominant platform, creating significant barriers to entry for potential competitors. This dominance, while beneficial to some, can also raise concerns about market power, innovation stagnation, and the potential for anti-competitive behavior. The classical economist, steeped in the principles of perfect competition and the invisible hand, might struggle to fully grasp the implications of network effects. In a world of diminishing returns, the idea that value increases with scale seems almost paradoxical. Yet network economics challenges these traditional assumptions, forcing us to reconsider the role of government regulation, antitrust policy, and the very definition of market efficiency. The policymaker, grappling with the complexities of regulating digital platforms, faces a daunting task. How to balance the benefits of innovation and network effects with the need to protect consumers and promote competition. How to prevent dominant platforms from exploiting their market power without stifling the dynamism that drives technological progress. These are questions that demand careful consideration and a nuanced understanding of the underlying dynamics of network games. Ultimately, the enduring power of networks lies in their ability to facilitate coordination, to amplify individual efforts, and to create value that would be impossible to achieve in isolation. As we move forward into an increasingly interconnected world, the principles of network economics will become ever more relevant, shaping the way we interact, the way we conduct business, and the way we govern our societies. But as one chapter closes, another begins. Looking ahead, we might ask, what new forms of coordination will emerge in the age of decentralized technologies like blockchain? Will the rise of artificial intelligence lead to even more concentrated platform power, or will it empower individuals and smaller groups to compete more effectively? The answers to these questions remain elusive, but they undoubtedly hold the key to understanding the next phase of economic evolution. And as we drift towards sleep, may this question linger and percolate in the quiet spaces of our minds, guiding us towards new insights and a deeper understanding of the ever-evolving world around us.